What is up everyone, it's Saber here and welcome to another Naruto What If. If you end up liking the video, please consider subscribing. It's free and you can take it back at any time and it really helps me out, and this is my second channel, so if you want some more what ifs, go check out my other channels. And with all of the YouTube formalities out of the way, let's get into it. It was late at night within King's Landing as Naruto was in his office given to him by Ned Stark. His shadow clones were all over the place looking at the financial ledgers left behind by Littlefinger, reading, making slight notations, comments, and tracing every transaction the late Master of Coin had made ever since he was granted the title. The minor drainage of the crown's finances were masked by various investments that the late Littlefinger of House Baelish had convinced Jon Arryn were worth the placing of so much money in them short term to gain twice as much in the long term. In theory, the practice was sound for what Peter Baelish was suggesting, and any normal man would have taken his words at face value. Unfortunately, all the investments made by Peter were all false ones. Oh, they went to where Peter said, but the places were all fake and only existed on paper. If anyone were to actually visit these places where these business investments resided, they would see the buildings were run down and empty if they weren't filled with squatters. In truth, Peter was in secret the owner of these false businesses, and thus all the money he bled from the crown went to him, and the loans were done to weaken the crown. On another front, using his genius mind, Peter convinced Jon Arryn and the king that to keep the kingdom going until the long run, paid off loans had to be made, namely to the Lannisters, who had the gold and the Iron Bank of Bravos, to ensure the Lannisters wouldn't be able to have the final say in Robert's kingdom. When suggesting the idea to the two, naturally it worked like a charm, or it did, until Naruto ended his life and proceeded to undo everything done to cripple the kingdom financially. On the plus side, Naruto was hearing good things about Tyrion being temporary lord of Lannisport in his father's name. While Naruto disliked the majority of the Lannisters right now, it didn't mean he should hate all of them. Myrcella and Tommen he wouldn't hate, nor Kevin Lannister. The man was merely following his big brother, and since Lancel had gone to take the Black at the Wall, he didn't have to worry about his son being held hostage by the Starks. Tyrion himself was keeping the people of Lannisport from rising up against House Lannister, no thanks to the abuse Joffrey and Cersei had unleashed on the overall populace before the man got there. From what Varys and his little birds told him, the small folk were being bled dry by Cersei spending more gold than Lannisport could bring in. And with the war hampering trade, it made the means to trade difficult for them all. Dear great sage, it seems like only yesterday you helped me win my freedom from the crazed ruler of the Vale, Lisa Arryn, and her dim-witted son Robin. Even now I hear whispers, as I'm sure you do, of the woman having gone even further into madness. Apparently Lady Lisa is now willing to pay both gold and give lordship to any assassin capable of killing the one she believes is responsible for Littlefinger's death, despite what was revealed about the man being involved in Jon Arryn's death. Somehow she blames you, given the accounts of the rumors of his demise circulating around yourself and the fact you used your magic on him to take his body elsewhere when he was still alive. While she is crazy, the woman is not stupid and has clearly put the mere coincidence together and wants you dead. Why she would even want to defend the honor the man who, from all messages sent out by Raven of Littlefinger, being involved in her husband's murder. I do not know. What I do know is Lady Lisa will seek out any means to see you dead. If you haven't already been attacked by assassins, I would keep an eye out for them all the same, and possibly watch over House Stark a little more than usual. If this woman is indeed not of sound mind, as we both suspect, all associated with your presence will be targeted, and that includes them on a less related subject matter not pertaining to crazy women of the Vale. I am actually writing to you to get Ned Stark to somehow get his son to stop his impressive march and advancement on my father, to at least let the idea of peace be made between all our houses, between the Starks, Lannisters, and of course the Baratheons. My sister believes we can win by outspending every other house with the mountain of gold we possess, but I am not so optimistic or blind to the idea that my house not losing to a much larger and clearly better trained army. I know we can lose, I've seen the reports, and I know my big brother Jaime is also a prisoner of the North, and as such has made my father's ability to fight become hampered at best. As such, I was hoping you could convince all the parties fighting against us to consider the idea of peace talks, even if they eventually say no. At least I can tell my father I tried and could do no more on my part. At least I know, should worse comes to worse, I might be the only Lannister left of my house and become the actual warden of the West, provided I don't lose my head when this is all over. In any case, I hope you can help Ned Stark, Robb Stark, the North, and the Baratheon brothers to stop this war from getting worse. With you convening the peace talks, I know we can find some solution to the problem at hand and bring about an end to the war. Tyrion of House Lannister and ruler of Lannisport, well, at least there's one Lannister among their ranks that has a good practical head on his shoulders. Sooner or later, Tywin is going to regret not bringing about Tyrion's full Potential. With any luck they can reconcile their differences before it's too late, said Naruto to himself before a knock on his door was made and the door opened to reveal a tired Ned Stark. How goes the hunt for the gold Lord Baelish took from the crown, asked Ned when he came into the room with a tired but friendly smile on his face. In short, boring as shit. It is so much easier to simply steal and spend all the money on one's possession than it is to maintain it for proper use, especially if it involves the Seven Kingdoms, said Naruto while his clones nodded. I'm sorry, I know you don't like being here. Robert was right about one thing. I do hate ruling this place. It's not for me. Perhaps that's why I didn't want to sit on the Iron Throne and become king. Deep down I knew it wasn't meant for me, remarked Ned with a tired sigh. You aren't ruling it, Ned, you are just getting it ready for its true ruler. Before we came here, King's Landing was a shithole. Don't look at me like that, it was a shithole. Robert did nothing to stop it from becoming one, and his negligence actually made things worse. You were lucky a plague didn't spring up prior to becoming Hand of the King and then Lord Regent when I was inspecting the overall stability of the city, said Naruto with Ned nodding while he looked out the window at the sight of summer showing signs of leaving and replacing itself with a short autumn. Before winter came I have tried so hard to do what was asked of me, but I feel it's still not enough, and now my son has become king in the north. If we don't do something fast, the entire kingdom will fall apart, with the others breaking off from the rest to become independent. If they do, each side could potentially turn on the other and cause untold death throughout all of Westeros, said Ned while Naruto nodded in agreement. And we will handle it when time allows. Right now we need to focus on keeping what we have of the kingdom intact. To do that we need the people on our side. For the most part, our combined efforts have lessened the burdens of the small folk. In doing so we have been able to gain the loyalty and support of the people, with the risk of them trying to fight off either the Kingsguard or the City Watch being removed, replied Naruto as he stiffened for a second and then turned to look outside. What is it? What's happened? Asked Ned, seeing Naruto's eyes narrowing in anger. Stannis just tried to do something extremely stupid, remarked Naruto coldly before he was gone in a flash. Stannis, what have you done? Asked Ned to himself while looking off in the distance. Renly's camp. Moments ago Renly was in his tent drinking wine. Brienne of Tarth was in the tent with him watching over her sworn king. Also in the tent was Catelyn Tully Stark. She had been explaining things to Renly about how Robb didn't want to sit on the Iron Throne, hence why the North was breaking away from the kingdom as a whole. All her family wanted was the long overdue justice against the Lannisters for their crimes against House Baratheon and House Stark for their acts of treachery. Renly of course had suspected this since Ned was regent, yet did not move to either make himself king or name his son king to rule over the Seven Kingdoms. Are you sure this is the truth, Lady Stark? I have no problem fighting the Lannisters in an alliance with House Stark in the north, but I don't want to be caught unaware of some form of treachery. While I know House Stark would never do such a thing, there are most likely those who would try something in the belief of gaining favor or ensuring the North stays independent once the war is over, questioned Renly while Catelyn nodded. I swear it by the mother, my son has no interest in the Iron Throne, neither does Ned. He is only acting as regent and wants the Seven Kingdoms to be healed with a proper ruler to maintain it, replied Catelyn, with Renly accepting it since the woman was big on keeping her word when stating the truth. Then I see no reason to have hostility between us, Catelyn. If anything, this will make the alliance between us more powerful. Your son doesn't want the Iron Throne even if he stays king of the North, and your husband certainly doesn't want the seat any longer. Then he has to sit on it. I have the entire backing of the Reach and the Stormlands, so army will crush my brothers tomorrow. Once I deal with him I will join up with your son and his army, and then we will deal with the Lannisters. I understand you have Jaime Lannister himself as a prisoner, replied Renly, with Catelyn nodding at his question about Tywin Lannister's eldest child under watchful eyes and is alone from the other prisoners. I need him alive. My son and husband know he could be a useful means to make Tywin Lannister bend the knee if we push for peace, said Catelyn while Renly nodding in agreement. A good idea. Jaime Lannister in a cell keeps Tywin Lannister from properly scheming against you in his own devious manner. Your son is every bit the Stark your husband is, Lady Catelyn, said Renly while Catelyn smiled. Since her son was indeed strong, all of her children were strong in their own way. Whatever else was meant to be said was interrupted when an unnatural wind blew into the tent and distracted the three people in it. Not surprising, since this wind was fierce and was not natural in this part of the region at this late at night, with the one man and two women focusing on where the disturbance came from. None of them saw a shadow in the form of man rise from the ground and move to grab Renly in order to stab the man in the back, only for it to be caught in a prism of light generated from a seal on the tent floor. The three people looked shocked to see some kind of shadow demon said to be formed from the darkest of magic had been put there and had the face of one Stannis Baratheon. The shadow snarled like an animal, its face clearly showing its rage at being denied its kill, and tried to break the prism-looking prison it had been confined to in order to kill its target Renly Baratheon. I had a feeling something like this would happen, remarked Naruto angrily while he appeared in the tent, and soon several others did too. Is this what I think it is? Asked Renly in shock, wonder and horror mixed into one. Yeah, a shadow demon. Those Lord of Light priestesses use their magic to make them. By being intimate with the creature's father you can tell it was Stannis because it looks just like him. That's how these magic-made demons work. They take on the gender or appearance of their sire after the Red Woman gives birth to them, meaning Stannis not only tried to have you killed in such a manner, but he is no longer loyal to his own wife, though something tells me she doesn't care about such things at this point, replied Naruto while the shadow demon now turned to stare at him and looking even more enraged. My mother and father will kill you, heretic. Stannis Baratheon will rule all the world and consume all non-believers in a sea of flame. The Lord of Light commands them to burn all of this world's false deities to the ground, exclaimed the shadow demon while Naruto scowled behind his mask and shot chain after chain through the prison to wrap around the shadow demon so it could not escape when he deactivated the seal before forcing the creature to its knees. Naruto, what are you doing? Questioned Caitlyn while he raised a hand to tell her to be quiet. I know you can hear me, Red Woman. You are connected to your little monster child, as all of your profession are. When they spawn such near mindless creatures you see what he sees and hears what he hears. You take a great deal of life from the body of the man you choose to fuck to birth these temporary creations. I wonder if Stannis even knows you shortened his lifespan by a decade because of this. Probably not. In any case, I had hoped Stannis would listen to reason and understand neither himself nor Renly are able to sit on the Iron Throne, but you had to whisper poisonous thoughts into his head about the Starks, your brother, and most likely me if the way your demon is snarling is any actual indication. And for this last part, one just want to say thank you, said Naruto while he no doubt sensed the others in the room frowning in confusion about that last part. Why should he be thanking Melisandre in the first place? Why are you thanking her or the shadow demon? Demanded Brienne, while Naruto just let out an amusing chuckle, one that made even the shadow demon nervous, because up until now I have been letting everyone outside of myself deal with these problems, with my interference being minimal. I wanted to keep it minimal because I did not want everyone to rely on me to fix their fucking issue when they popped up. I didn't want the world to look to me like I had all the answers and then expect said answers to your problems to be handed over so easily, replied Naruto, with his grip on the creature through his chains tightening, with the shadow demon crying out in pain. If we went to him for everything no one would learn anything, thought the people in the room, but now I see it was a mistake to hold back after all this time, to let Stannis, Renly, the Starks, and anyone else involved in this whole fucking war sort this out like responsible adults. Do you know what I see when it comes to everyone here in this tent? What I see when I look into the eyes of this shadow demon and see the eyes of the fear Red Woman unable to use her magic to kill the creature she birthed, questioned Naruto before his hand shot out and grabbed the shadowy Stannis lookalike's face. What do you see? Asked the shadow demon of Stannis Baratheon. I see children. I see nothing but whiny pouting, fist banging on the table and the floor in the middle of a temper tantrum. Children, and like all children, when they become unruly they need to be punished by the adult of the group, namely me, stated Naruto, before channeling chakra into the hand holding the demon's face. Stop it, pleaded the demon while feeling itself going through incredible pain. Are you still listening? Through the link you have with your demon you spawned with Stannis a few days ago, Melisandre. I hope you are, but if not I suggest you pay attention right fucking now. I'm done sitting on the side letting you, the Lannisters, and everyone else do what they want when acting like spoiled children, being denied something, and then trying to get it the wrong way after I kill your demon. I'm coming for you, my dear, and for Stannis too. Don't think for one second your so-called Lord of Light for a god or his so-called champion, that is Stannis, will win against me. Neither of them will ever have the necessary strength needed to defeat me, replied Naruto before he obliterated the shadow demon lookalike of Stannis Baratheon from the world. When it was all said and done, Renly looked at Naruto in awe at what he had done, and truly understood the ramifications of scoffing his own brother's decision to use the Red Woman's magic. To think his own brother would go so far to claim the Iron Throne and remove all obstacles in his path. They had talked a few days ago at the instances of both Naruto and Caitlyn to reach terms to ensure neither brother killed the other, so that the two Baratheon brothers could slay their common enemy in the form of the Lannisters, only for this to happen. My brother Stannis to go so far to be a kinslayer, whispered Renly while moving to his chair and reached for his wine. He hasn't killed you yet, so technically Stannis isn't a kinslayer until you actually die by his hands, though the fact he even tried is just as bad, replied Naruto while putting a hand on Renly's shoulder. What now? Asked Caitlyn with Naruto's eyes narrowing. Renly, you will take your army to march against the Lannisters, at the same time send a raven throughout the 7 kingdoms about what Stannis just tried to do and list all the names of the witnesses who saw the failed Attempt with everyone here named as such. No one will dare dispute the claim of what Stannis did as a lie, and no lord worth their own house's honor will support him afterwards. We will see just how many lords and houses will follow Stannis, and which ones will leave him. Those that leave him will be spared, those that don't I will personally end, replied Naruto with Renly nodding. I should have listened to you when I had the chance. I was a fool, said Renly, with the sage patting his shoulder. We have all been fools at one point or another, naive and our heads filled with dreams. You are not the first to be one. Just be glad your life was not ended before learning from your mistakes, replied Naruto with Renly nodding. Should we not deal with Stannis now while we have some measure of surprise, asked Brienne curiously. No, needless death is not the way to win here. It may be the fastest way, but not the best way. We need to see who will follow this red woman and her Lord of Light after we let news of what Stannis tried to do out into the world. We will use his own words against him when he sent out his own message to the Seven Kingdoms when staking his claim to the Iron Throne. Let no man claim ignorance, stated Naruto with Renly nodding. Let no man claim ignorance, repeated Renly, but firmly. Lady Stark, tomorrow you need to head back your son's camp. Let him know what has happened and of the alliance made here tonight, replied Naruto, with Caitlyn nodding. I shall. Until tonight I did not believe such a dishonorable thing could be done before my every eyes, replied Caitlyn while she stared at where the shadow demon had once been. Could the red woman not make more if she made one with Stannis? Could there be more under her command, questioned Brienne worriedly while glancing around for other possible threats. No, I'm familiar with her type of magic she employed here tonight. Fortunately for all of us here, she can't make another one right away. Plus, when the red woman does lay with Stannis, it drains him of his life energy, and it ages him in the process by roughly 10 years. She doesn't dare do it a second time with him. Now she would risk making the man extremely old and thus unable to fight on the battlefield as her Lord of Light's champion. She portrays him to be to her followers. Chances are Stannis will have no choice but to make a tactical retreat, but make it seem like he's doing it from a military standpoint, not because his secret attempt to kill Renly using the red woman's magic are ravens telling what really happened tonight and how his attempt to kill Renly failed will cause many to abandon his ranks, replied Naruto, knowing he could end any chance of Stannis saving face with this failed attempt on Renly's life. This red woman needs to be killed before she can try such a move again. Who knows who else could be targeted by her sorcery in the future, replied Caitlyn with Naruto nodding. I will handle her myself, said Naruto. Before he was gone in a flash, Stannis's camp. Stannis was not pleased. He never looked pleased, but right now his look was murderous to an extent. Even Melisandre was surprised in seeing to this extent, though it was no real surprise. The man was angry given how her plan to kill Renly so he could gain control of the soldiers of the Stormlands, to have an army capable of marching on King's Landing and taking it by force like his older brother Robert did against the Targaryens years ago, only for the plan to fail. And no doubt Renly was doubling his camp's defenses to ensure there were no further surprise attacks tonight. You assured me your creation could do the job it was born to do. Now I find out that not only has it failed, but the sage has directed his attention toward us. I've seen that man's power when unleashed on his enemies, and because of your bumbling as well as my blind faith in you, both of us have become his enemies, stated Stannis angrily, while the red woman in front of him tried to keep an air of confidence about her and only succeeding on a marginal scale. I can protect us, your grace. The Lord of Light does not abandon his followers or his champion when chosen to represent his greatness, said Melisandre, but even she knew her words were hollow, and for good reason, since the fire had revealed nothing to her when looking into it for guidance once the shadow demon was destroyed. If anything, the fire seemed to quiver in fear, and the Lord of Light had shown nothing in terms of possible vision. Surely the one true God of this world was not afraid of the demon sage, this enemy of her God, the herald to the Lord of the shadows of the darkness. Surely the Lord of Light was far stronger than this demon sage and could empower her to combat him. And yet, if that was the case, why did the flames tremble? Why did her God stay silent? Why did it not empower her with the means to slay this heretic and enemy of her God? Your so-called Lord of Light is nothing when compared to me, whispered Naruto from the shadows, and appearing out of them with a pissed-off look in his three eyes. Guards called out Stannis, but found none were coming into the room. Don't bother, they are stuck in an illusionary realm where all is well to them inside this tent. As far as they all know, you are having a civil conversation with the red bitch here about your plans to take the Iron Throne, replied Naruto, while the red woman tried to flee the tent only for a barrier to deny her access to the other side. Some kind of barrier. I had heard the stories of such complex magic, but to use it in this manner is beyond my skills, thought Melisandre in shock. Don't bother fleeing either. There is a barrier around us that only I can break and only I can remove willingly. Even if you did kill me, this would be where you die, most likely of starvation, if not a blade killing me, other out of anger, whichever comes first. replied Naruto after seeing her shocked look at being denied an escape. You should have stayed out of this affair. It doesn't concern you in any way, Sage, said Stannis bitterly while Naruto glared at him. Perhaps, but then again I do find the idea of someone killing their own family member using such deplorable means to be wrong on so many levels, replied Naruto with Stannis scowling further. You have the nerve to lecture me on what is considered to be wrong, you who single-handedly killed thousands of men with your magic swords and various skills alone. When my brother rebelled against House Targaryen, when House Greyjoys went and rebelled against him, how many men died by your hands, questioned Stannis, while Naruto just looked at him with uncaring eyes. Thousands, just like you said, Stannis, but while that is indeed true, I never once even remotely considered the idea of killing a member of my own family. I'm not you, I'm not a kinslayer, said Naruto with Stannis' eyes narrowing. I didn't succeed, so I cannot be labeled one, challenged Stannis with Naruto scoffing at his declaration. Hardly the point. You made the attempt. You actually made the attempt, failed, and got caught doing it. You are a kinslayer, Stannis. The fact you even tried makes you one. It doesn't matter if you failed or succeeded, you still made the attempt, and soon all of the Seven Kingdoms will know what you did, replied Naruto before turning to look at the now slightly scared and intimidated Melisandre. No one will believe you or my brother. I can say your words are those of a liar. There is no proof of the act outside of your words, and they aren't enough to sway my men, said Stannis with a hint of smugness in his voice. Renly and I weren't the only ones in his tent when your shadow demon spawned son made the attempt. Catelyn Tully Stark was in the tent, as was Brienne of Tarth, Renly's new bodyguard. Add to the fact several of the men from the Stormlands and the Reach came into the room to see your creation restrained and confessing that you and the Red Woman were his parents, along with the attempt on your brother's life. So you can deny it all you want, but the fact remains that people of high status and unquestionable honor were witnesses to the event. By the time this is over, almost every solid or not sworn to your new religion will abandon you, countered Naruto with a smile, and saw Stannis' eyes were filled with a cold fury. Damn it, Catelyn Stark is many things, but a liar is not one of them. And Brienne of House Tarth being a no-nonsense type woman makes this worse. Even the various men from the Stormlands and the Reach have seen the Shadow Demon before the Sage killed it, thought Stannis bitterly. You have no right to challenge the Lord of Light's champion. He will lead this world through a time of great darkness and strife. Deserters, non-believers, and heretics will not stop us from achieving victory, exclaimed Melisandre angrily, while summoning what power she possessed to her hands, only for chains to sprout out of Naruto's body with point tips attacked, and they pierced her upper body from chest to arms, with one piercing her throat. Your Lord of Light is nothing but a pathetic fire demon from hell seeking to rise up to the rank of deity by convincing people to sacrifice other people in his name by burning them. I will deal with him soon enough once I've dealt with Stannis here, replied Naruto, before stopping the sword Lightbringer that Stannis had picked up and tried to swing at him during that distraction to take off his head with just his finger. I am not my brothers or the other lords of the Seven Kingdoms. I don't fear you, Sage. I will cut you down and use your death to rally all the lords from the Seven Kingdoms to my side, said Stannis, while stunned in the belief that his sword had not in fact killed the Sage. If it was indeed as powerful as Melisandre claimed, he couldn't even move it from the masked man's grip when Naruto's fingers held it in place. You're right about one thing, Stannis, you are not your brothers. You are not worthy of being their brothers. The only good thing that came out of you was your daughter. It is a shame she will have to grow up without you. I had planned to spare your life and have you take the black, but now I see your mind is too far gone. 20 years of bitterness, heartache over personal losses and other things have destroyed your mind, said Naruto before stabbing the man with the kusanagi with his free hand, and watched Stannis fall to the floor dead. Retracting his churka chains from the Red Woman, the Sage quickly rearranged the scene in front of him so what happened here to tonight would not be revealed to the world for the sake of peace. A lie was formed through what would later be speculation among those in the camp. The next day, at seeing Stannis Baratheon dead beside the Red Woman, no one would ever know or even be able to prove shot of a confession that the great Sage had visited Stannis Baratheon in his war tent with the Red Woman and killed them both for the horrible crime they committed. Lannisport. Sometime later, word soon spread of what Stannis had done in terms of trying kill his brother Renly and take control of the man's army. The specifics were written in great detail: how it was done, how it failed, how there were witnesses to the event, and who the witnesses were to prove it wasn't a lie to smear Stannis's name or house. Of course, Naruto had added in his own lie to the Raven messages about how Stannis had died killing the Red Woman after she proposed another attempt using another shadow demon, how the war-hardened Baratheon tried to redeem himself by renouncing the Lord of Light faith from Essos he had embraced earlier on, and ended the Red Woman to protect his brother from another attempt. In truth, it was a horrible lie meant to protect House Baratheon from further shame. More than anything, Renly would see the story for the lie it truly was, as would some of the smarter people of the Seven Kingdoms who knew Stannis well enough, but they would not call that part of the message a lie, as they knew doing so would cause problems in the future no one wanted and felt the lie was a better option. Stannis was a soldier and good military commander who always fought beside his troops when in a battle those who knew the truth about him felt it was better to let him die. Keeping what was left of his own personal honor, he deserved that much. Naturally his death was met with mourning, while others, namely those on the side of the Lannisters, were cheering, since it was one less threat they had to fight, and in their eyes a dead Stannis Baratheon was a good thing. A man with his military experience with a descent army in hand could crush them if the army from the north didn't. Killed by whom? Asked Cersei while drinking some wine with her brother Tyrion in his office, currently reading the message sent to him about the event. It would seem that Stannis tried to have his brother killed using a shadow demon of some kind after apparently being intimate with the Red Woman we've been hearing so much about. Ultimately it failed thanks to the sage visiting him to try brokering peace between the two brothers. Only it wasn't Renly who died that night, it was Stannis, said Tyrion while reading the message slowly and methodically. What the shadow demon turned on its creator? Asked Cersei curiously at her brother. No, far from it. The shadow demon was caught by the sage and destroyed. Stannis had a sudden revelation regarding his actions and killed this Melisandre when she offered to make him another one to do the job right. She of course retaliated in defense of herself and killed him with one of the weapons in the tent, with the two ultimately killing each other in the process. Her Lord of Light must have been powerful, because she survived quite a few stab wounds from Stannis' sword before getting in a lethal hit of her own, said Tyrion while Cersei seemed pleased by this. Good, one less Baratheon to threaten us, and the only remaining one is not commander material. One less army for our father to deal with once the north is destroyed. I say well done, Renly Baratheon, remarked Cersei while Tyrion was not amused. That's not what father says. According to this message here, even with Stannis gone, the army he assembled in its majority are flocking to Renly Baratheon, and the others are too confused on who to fight for now that their faith in the Lord of Light religion is broken. Some of the men not joining Renly have decided to take the black to redeem themselves in the eyes of the Seven. Not to mention Renly Baratheon had married Margaery Tyrell and had the backing of the Reach under his command, over 100,000 soldiers, which is far more than what we have right now. Not to mention our army is currently engaging the north with all of its might, commented Tyrion, with Cersei not looking worried in the slightest. We can still outspend the northern and the southern army 3-1, something we should have been doing from the start, and paying every sellsword from here to Bravos to fight for us, replied Cersei, with Tyrion not looking amused. I say father raised you have too much respect for money. Dead men can't collect gold, sister. No sellsword would fight for us no matter how much gold we throw their way due to the overwhelming odds against us. What good is gold to the sellsword fighting for the losing side? Questioned Tyrion, with Cersei not believing him in the slightest. Better to serve and die for House Lannister than die one way or another on the receiving end of our swords, countered Cersei with a hint of snobbishness in her tone befitting a person with a pampered lifestyle and rarely didn't get her way. Oh, grow up, sister. We have no way to win this war you helped start. We are now vastly outnumbered on all sides. Jaime is a prisoner of the north. Our father is losing ground with each passing day. With each new battle lost, you sit here in this city along with your bastard for a son Joffrey, thinking you are untouchable. I have news for you, Cersei. We are not untouchable, and sooner or later our house will pay the debts owed in this war, said Tyrion, with Cersei scowling at him now after making the comment about her son being a bastard. Tyrion doesn't know anything. My son should be king. I should still be queen regent of King's Landing and watching over my eldest son's control over the Seven Kingdoms. My control over the Seven Kingdoms, thought Cersei darkly as she planned to rule over the Seven Kingdoms through her son and make everyone not a Lannister bow to her whims. But then the damn sage got involved, saving Ned Stark, revealing the infidelity and the fact her children she had were with Jaime and not Robert. It was only by Lannister pride and conviction that Tywin Lannister didn't believe a word of it. When the ravens were sent throughout the Seven Kingdoms, her father didn't want to believe it to be true, whether due to personal denial or ignorance. It was unknown to Cersei. Maybe it was a combination of both, but even she knew sooner or later in this life Tywin Lannister would somehow learn the truth and come to the realization he had fought for his family under false pretenses in the belief Joffrey was the rightful king. She knew her father well enough to know his wrath, and if the truth was believed by him, then he would indeed lash out with all his fury if Tywin Lannister did. As such, her children would not be safe, and naturally he would be forgiven for the act of kinslaying. Not surprising, since those family members in question were his grandchildren, who by the laws of gods and men are all bastards born from the act of incest. Fortunately, I have sent a raven to the great sage. With any luck he can convince Ned Stark to convince his son Robb Stark to hold peace talks with our father, maybe even get House Baratheon to not kill us all. We can get this ugly business behind Us before things get even worse for House Lannister, continued Tyrion while ignoring Cersei's faraway look, and his words actually bring her back to the conversation at hand. You can't be serious peace talks with the Starks with the Baratheons. The lion does not bend the knee to inferior animals. Stags get eaten by lions. Wolves bow and whimper in the presence of lions, not the other way around, growled Cersei angrily at Tyrion. Really? And when the stag and the wolves outnumber the lions 3-1, when the stags outnumber the lion 5-1, when the stags and the wolves unite their combined armies and have the means to crush the lions to the point where it is laughable for the lions to win, questioned Tyrion, with Cersei getting out of her chair and looking ready to smack him. Is that why you made a deal with Dorne and its prince to send my only daughter of all the Lannisters to Dorne? They have even more reason to hate us, accused Cersei, with Tyrion sighing. She was set up in an arranged marriage with Prince Dorian's son and heir. Unlike the rest of Westeros, they do not hurt little girls in Dorne. Not only that, but the prince assured me that he does not care what Myrcella's questionable status is so long as she doesn't do anything to hurt his son. I gave Prince Dorian my word that Myrcella is a good-natured girl and his son will adore her. Your daughter is not only going there to ensure she is safe from danger, but to allow her to know the prince there and form a bond of sorts before they become married. I have heard much about the boy and know he will not do anything horrid to my niece, contrary to what you believe about me, replied Tyrion, with Cersei scowling. My daughter is being married off to a house of snakes who hate the lions more than the wolves and stags combined. It is not natural. Lions do not and should not mate with snakes, countered Cersei, while Tyrion looked at her with mixture of amusement and a sense of knowing what she believed. And I'm sure it does to you, since in your mind only lions should mate with other lions, not unlike you and Jaime. Tyrion shot back, with Cersei looking at him with pure hatred. You have no right to judge me, monster. After the things you have done, you killed our mother. You have been a blight on our family since the day of your birth. You have been a mockery of everything being a Lannister stands for, and I hate you for it, just like father always did, exclaimed Cersei angrily, before storming out. I'll admit I have done some bad things, but at least I never committed incest with one of my siblings, thought Tyrion before he went back to his duties as Lord of Lannisport. Qarth. At the moment, Daenerys was enjoying herself within the walls of Qarth. The 13 had seen her small khalasar and at first had not been impressed, but then the guards on the walls had heard the loud cries of the 3 dragons within their cages, and the biggest one of the 3, that was Drogon, had even shot out a small yet still impressive stream of fire. Alarmed by this turn of events, the 13 of Qarth had decided to see Daenerys Targaryen, her small khalasar, and above all else the 3 dragons she had in her possession. Unknown to the 13, or even Daenerys for that matter, the 3 dragons had gotten much bigger than planned, thanks in part to Naruto's intervention, namely him offering each of the 3 flying fire-breathing lizards pieces of his flesh to feast on, and the energy from said flesh giving them additional strength. It had been his plan from the start, since dragons were his little creation back in the days of old, before the 7 kingdoms had even considered answering to one king at what was considered the center of them all in King's Landing. Naruto wanted these dragons to live just as much as Daenerys did, but for different reasons than her, and yet still wanted it to happen all the same. As for Daenerys, she easily remembered what Naruto told her about Qarth, and not to be trusting of those who held sway over the city. With the sudden return of the dragons, it was only natural the 13 would be interested in them and by her, since they knew Targaryens were connected to dragons by blood, so having their handler was necessary. After much talking outside of the walls of Qarth, she along with her khalasar had been given entry into the city and stayed at the resides of one of the 13, a man named Zaro, who was the 2nd richest merchant in all of Qarth, swore what was basically an oath of blood that he would help her get what she wanted while in the city: food, water, clothing, and shelter for as long possible, or as Yora had told her discreetly, how long it proved profitable to have the mother of dragons as his very own guest, with all 3 of the said dragons living in his house. In short, Zaro wanted something from her and was merely waiting for the right time to collect on his investment. When the time was right, as things were going, Daenerys was keeping her khalasar close to ensure none of them ran off or someone of high influence targeted them to use for control. And her Yora had made it clear that the 3 dragons were at the moment the most precious and rarest of all things in the 7 kingdoms, more rare than even Valyrian steel. Holding one of these dragons made you wealthier than all the richest men in the 7 kingdoms. 2 made you powerful with a strength greater than the armies of Westeros put together, and all 3 dragons full grown. In one word, unstoppable. Many people who rule Qarth would aim for that last one. At the moment, Daenerys was walking through a garden area of sorts along with several of her khalasar, and Yora of course keeping a watchful eye from a respectful distance, not too close that he was hovering over her too protectively, and not too far away that he couldn't defend her from a possible attack from an assassin. She looks beautiful in the dress, commented Naruto while standing beside Yora, with the man in question nearly jumping in the air from the surprise visit. Great "Sage, I thought you weren't going to visit Daenerys until much later," questioned Yora while wondering why no one was looking at the three-eyed masked man. "I am Daenerys doesn't even know I am here watching her. No one knows I'm even here except for you. Everyone here is bound in an illusion where no one can see or hear me, but you were to be more accurate. They see a simple man speaking to you, but no one can quite make out what our conversation truly is, or if it's even good news for you to hear," said Naruto while Yora was a bit unnerved by that part. "And why are you here? Surely not to just speak to me in secret about the simple things in life?" asked Yora with Naruto shaking his head. "No, I'm just passing on some news for you. Stannis Baratheon is dead," replied Naruto like it was a simple thing to discuss. "I see one less threat to Daenerys and her return home," remarked Yora while knowing the few enemies Daenerys had back in Westeros the better. "Yes, Stannis recently tried to do something I find distasteful and I killed him myself. No one truly knows this except those with half a brain. I suggest you keep it to yourself. After letting Daenerys know, it will help the Queen of Dragons know that there is now one less Baratheon out there who wants her dead should she ever make herself known in Westeros to claim the Iron Throne," said Naruto with Yora nodding. "How are things in Westeros?" asked Yora curiously, while Naruto shaking his head. "A lot of fighting, a lot of killing, treachery, betrayal. It's a dark place to be right now, even with Ned Stark trying to hold things together as regent. I'm advising him on my end, but we can only do so much even with the likes of Ser Barristan and even Ser Sandor Clegane aiding us with the recruitment of new men. Daenerys will have to be well prepared before sitting on the Iron Throne like she wants," replied Naruto with Yora nodding. "She is still too kind right now, too trusting, too innocent," commented Yora, with the sage beside him nodding sadly. "Daenerys needs to see more of how cruel the world is right now if she wants to rule over 7 kingdoms one day. Places filled with despair, sadness, anger and other dark things one such as her will have a hard time seeing, but needs to see all the same," remarked Naruto while seeing the woman walking along and smiling at people with 2 Dothraki bodyguards flanking her. "You have a place in mind?" asked Yora with Naruto nodding. "I do. When your time here in Karth is over, suggest the city of Astapor and seek out those who control the training of the Unsullied," said Naruto before he started to walk away. "Astapor, the Unsullied? For what reason would Daenerys seek out those men and such a group?" asked Yora in confusion at the suggestion. "Because of the future travels throughout Essos, Daenerys will get herself a big fat target on her back for what she currently has in her possession," answered Naruto, while Yora's back stiffened when he heard this. "The dragons," whispered Yora, knowing they were back at Zoro's home and currently not with their mother. "They are the perfect targets right now for someone to steal. They aren't really strong enough to fight against a large force right now and still weak enough to try taming if in the right hands. Even Daenerys herself is considered valuable to some people here in Karth who will use this as a chance to sire children with Targaryen blood through her. Whether both parties are willing is still anyone's guess. My point to you, Yora, is to stick close to Daenerys and get her a ship to Astapor immediately before one, if not all of the 13 decide to claim what the Mother of Dragons has in her possession," said Naruto before he vanished from sight. After walking around a tree, he had one more place to be right now to help secure the Baratheon name from dying out officially. On Stannis' side of the family Dragonstone, sometime later at night, Shireen Baratheon was a simple girl, young, naive and innocent in the ways of how the world worked. She had spent her entire childhood up until now being kept out of sight and hidden away in the castle, never allowed to go outside to meet other people, never to interact with anyone outside of her mother or father. She might on occasion see or speak to Ser Davos Seaworth if she was lucky, but they were rare times. This of course was due to the fact her face was horribly scarred from the residual disease of grayscale had been inflicted upon the girl when she was only just a child. It happened when a merchant was selling dolls and one caught her father's eye because the doll was the spitting image of Shireen. Little did Stannis know his own actions in giving his only living child the doll would cause her to be infected with the disease, and many calling for her to be sent away to Old Valyria to be with the Stone Men. Unknown to Shireen, given how young she was at the time, her usually cold father had decided to fight such advice, calling for every maester in the 7 kingdoms to come to his home and combat this vile illness. In the end, the fight to keep the grayscale illness from turning her into one of the Stone Men was successful. It left a mark on her no one could remove. At the time, Stannis could have asked for the great sage to heal his child, but the man was bitter at the time of the three-eyed masked man for stopping him from getting to the remaining Targaryen children. Robert had blamed the issue on both the sage and Stannis, but punished Stannis for it since the sage could easily throw off any punishment Robert made against him, hence why Stannis was made ruler over Dragonstone and not the Stormland which had been given to Renly. The years of bitter resentment had only crippled the second oldest Baratheon more than helped on an emotional level, and would not allow him to seek out Naruto for help in curing his only daughter. As for Shireen, most of her days were spent reading books and the stories about ancient times surrounding the kings of old of the lost cities, and of course her favorite being the dragons that flew through the sky, with the Targaryens being able to somehow control the beasts and their greatness. So it came to a surprise to the girl when another legend written on her books appeared, and she gasped at the sight of the great sage himself. She had heard the rumors about him from the servants who knew of her existence, but were all sworn to silence, and of course, Ser Davos had been helpful in answering when asked about the sage, with his powers being as grand as the stories say. Shireen's mother had never approved of such things being told to her about the sage, and even less now that her parents had embraced the Lord of Light religion the strange red woman preached about when arriving on the island. "Hello Shireen Baratheon, you are doing well I see," remarked Naruto in a friendly tone. "You are the great sage," exclaimed Shireen excitedly, with her voice slightly raised. "Indeed, I am the great sage, my lady. As to why I am here, the truth is I came here to see you," replied Naruto, while Shireen was shocked yet happy to know he was here to speak with her personally. It was like her name day came early. "Why did you come to see me?" asked Shireen, though it took a moment to collect herself in terms of being a proper lady in front of this powerful person. "For two reasons, my lady. First, is to unfortunately be the bringer of bad news regarding your father Stannis Baratheon. I regret to inform you he is dead," replied Naruto, with Shireen looking shocked and saddened by the news. "Dead? You mean he's gone?" questioned Shireen, who was now crying tears over the loss of her father. He was so strict and cold to others, but deep down the little girl knew her father still had a caring heart. Deep inside it was reserved only for her to see and feel when no one else was around. Yes, he had an altercation with the Red Woman about something she tried and failed to do in order to gain him support of others. It did not go well when they started to argue over it. They ended up killing each other. From what I heard, the Red Woman mentioned how your father should sacrifice you or Lord of Light, but Stannis wouldn't allow it. I think by that point he had just enough of her and tried to kill the Red Woman," replied Naruto, with his lie easy rolling off his tongue that even a full-grown and intelligent adult would have believed him. "What will happen to me now?" asked Shireen sadly, and knew that without her father the position of ruling over Dragonstone or even living here was brought into question. "That remains to be seen. Your mother is by law the ruler of Dragonstone now, but only until the heir is ready, namely you. While I have no problem with that fact, I do have a problem with her embracing the new religion taking hold here," replied Naruto, with the little girl nodding. "Mother has been acting strange lately. She has been talking about burning people alive to appease the Lord of Light. I think my uncle on her side of the family being one of them," remarked Shireen fearfully. "For what family members she had left your mother is sadly not right in the head and hasn't been for years. It's not entirely her fault though, since the constant attempts to give your now late father a son and male heir has ended in multiple failures," replied Naruto, with Shireen nodding while knowing of her stillborn brothers who preceded her, and the one child she could have ended up being scarred for life, whispered Shireen, while making it sound like it was her fault and nobody else. "That was not your fault. The merchant who sold your father the doll he put in your crib is the idiot responsible for your facial disfigurement. In fact, your father loved you more than you know. You were the one form of happiness and joy he had left in his bitter cold life filled with disappointments. You were the one thing he cherished above all things, and kept hidden for fear of your life being targeted by his many enemy," said Naruto in a very serious tone. "Really, father always seemed like he wanted to be warm and open with me, but there was hesitation in his eyes when I approached him. I thought my face being the way it was, I thought he was ashamed of me," said Shireen, while Naruto shook his head. "No, in fact he was the one ashamed of himself for giving you the doll that caused you the illness responsible for your facial scarring, when all his advisors told him to send you to Old Valyria to live among the stone men. I have it on good authority that your father told them to go to hell and called forth all the maesters in the 7 kingdoms to find a ways to save your life," replied Naruto, as he knew this story very well and knew this girl needed to hear it too. Just because Stannis had made the wrong choice regarding the attempt to kill Renly didn't mean his daughter had to see him in a bad light. After his death the girl was innocent and thus should keep some form of it in regards to her memory of the man. "So father did love me," whispered Shireen happily. "With all his heart," said Naruto, while mentally berating Stannis for being so damn cold when it came to everything else. "Damn hard ass for a stag." "What was the second reason you were here?" asked Shireen after a long moment. "To heal your face, to do what no one else could," replied Naruto, with Shireen looking at him in shock. "But my father was told by the maesters that there was no power capable of healing me," said Shireen, with Naruto smiling behind his mask, but it showed around his eyes that he was amused. "Your maesters were not me. In truth, I had the power to heal you for a long time, but your father had become bitter and he hated me for my actions during his brother Robert's rebellion against House Targaryen. King Robert couldn't punish me for my actions for letting the 2 Targaryens' children get away, so he punished your father instead. In doing so, it made the relationship between us very bitter, and his pride wouldn't allow him to even remotely consider asking for my help. Even if I came to offer my services, he would have most likely ordered his men to imprison or kill me where I stood," replied Naruto, with Shireen nodding. "Since that sounded a lot like her father, that does sound like him," whispered Shireen, with Naruto nodding. "Indeed it does. Now hold still, my lady, this won't hurt you, but moving around makes healing you more difficult," replied Naruto before his free hand was covered in a green chakra and went gently over her face. "It's so warm, like a gentle summer breeze," remarked Shireen, with Naruto letting out a chuckle. "That it does. You're fortunate I am here now rather than when you were older. This would not have healed you had I come to Dragonstone in a few years," replied Naruto before he made the entirety of the girl's grayscale vanish from her face. "Thank you, great sage. I don't know how I can repay you," said Shireen, while Naruto just looked at the girl with joy, knowing he had helped her remove such a scar from her person. "For one, you can move to make peace with Renly while your mother is now ruler of Dragonstone. You could have her removed on grounds of mental incompetency. The Lord of Light religion has clearly done damage to her already scarred mind," replied Naruto, with the girl in front of him nodding. "I don't want to fight Uncle Renly. He was always nice to me, even if the times we met were very few," replied Shireen, with Naruto nodding. "Good. Also, I would suggest keeping Ser Davos close by as a good advisor. He's a man who came from little to nothing and served your father loyally for years," replied Naruto, with Shireen nodding. "I will thank you, great sage, for your help. I will send a raven out immediately to him and Renly before taking control of Dragonstone," replied Shireen, with Naruto giving her an approving nod. "Smart girl. I wish you good luck in all of your future endeavors. Be safe, my lady," said Naruto before he vanished in a ripple. Shireen smiled at the spot where he once stood before looking in the mirror and finally seeing the grayscale that once covered half of her face was in fact removed. She was of course saddened to hear of her father's death. All the book stories and advice from maesters could not have truly prepared her for such a thing, but she would endure it. She was Shireen of House Baratheon. She would not falter. Shireen knew would show everyone that this little girl was indeed the daughter of Stannis Baratheon in another realm. Ryler, or as many called him in Essos, the Lord of Light, was finding himself unusually nervous for a supposed god, though in truth he wasn't a god like the old ones, or the seven for that matter. They ruled over Westeros and the seven kingdoms there with more than enough strength to repel him if a fight broke out between them and himself. The Red Demon snarled angrily at how his plans to cripple the old gods and the seven had blown up in his demonic face. First, as priestess Melisandre had failed to use her gift he gave the woman to offer up proper sacrificial energy to give him power. Oh, she burned idols of the seven and made Stannis Baratheon, along with those loyal to him, denounce the seven. It was a good start actually, but there had been no actual sacrifices by the fire. She had used her power to make a shadow demon to kill Stannis's brother, fairly acceptable since it was being done in his name, and thus make the life energy of Renly Baratheon become his own again. He was met with failure by his fanatical priestess. She not only failed to kill Renly and give him his life upon being killed, but Melisandre also made an enemy out of the Nightingale Sage of Six Paths himself. The last time Ryler had clashed with him, the false god had been trounced badly by Naruto, and was only spared on a whim. It was insulting. Naruto had warned Ryler to leave his world and realm alone, or else at the time Ryler had agreed he would, but also decided to wait until the time was right to strike back to build up his strength in Essos before launching another big attempt at Westeros and the gods there protecting its people. He could have done it and would have succeeded in time if not for the damn sage sticking his nose into his business. "I told you to stay away from my realm, Ryler. I can't make things any more clear to you in regards to my command," said Naruto from behind the demon. "And false god, you should have killed me when you had the chance. Mortal, this is my domain. I am a god here," replied Ryler, with Naruto not looking amused. "A mistake. I am going to correct here and now. Oh, and Ryler, you are not a god. You are a pretender, a fake. I know humans from the days of Chakra and Shinobi who make you look like a chump, so don't go blustering to me about being a god here, because we both know you are far from being one, just as I am far beyond you," whispered Naruto, with Ryler snarling at him. "You dare insult me in my own domain, I will make you burn for this," exclaimed Ryler, with fire surrounding them and the demon howling in fury. "No you won't," replied Naruto before moved faster than the demon could see and landed a solid punch on Ryler's stomach. Ryler coughed up blood, his many eyes widened in shock. How could this mere mortal after all these years still be stronger than him, faster than him? One punch, and already Ryler felt the need to puke. It didn't make since he had been gaining sacrifices over in Essos for years. His strength now was 3 to 4 times what it had once been the last time he fought Naruto. How could this mortal keep getting stronger than me? Is he always stronger than me? Did I ever have a chance? Thought Ryler before feeling the backhanded fist of Naruto hit his face, followed by a double chakra covered punch to the chest, and sent the false god flying back in pain. You think, because of a few centuries of people sacrificing others by fire to you that your strength is on par with mine. You couldn't beat me back then, and you can't beat me now. You could have the strength of our first encounter combined with your power now, and you would still lose to me. I spared your pathetic life last time because you were weak and thus not a threat to me. I tolerated your existence because you were not worth the effort to kill. Even now I find myself disgusted with the idea of flexing so much of my power to wipe your presence from the realms. It's practically beneath me, replied Naruto before he delivered punch after punch and kick after kick against the false god until the red demon was barely conscious on the ground. I will not lose, whimpered out Ryler while Naruto brought out Madara's gunbai and sliced the demon in half at the waist to make the false god scream in pain. You lost long before I got here, remarked Naruto to the screaming demon, before taking creature's head clean off to silence the screams. With his task done, the three-eyed sage left the realm Ryler called his domain and did not look back. Esso's city of Astapor. Daenerys Targaryen was walking with Yora right beside her. She kept her face impassive while walking like a ruler. Should the events of Karth played out in her mind as she had heard Yora's advice to leave soon and ordered him to find a ship with a good captain who would take her to Astapor. Unfortunately, the advice had come too late as Zaro had made an alliance with the warlocks from the House of the Undying to work together in taking control of Karth. With the dragons returning, the warlocks felt their magic return, and the closer the dragons were to them, the more powerful their magic became when used. She lost many of her Khalasar that day when returning to the house with one missing among the dead, only to find said person a woman named Doria who Zaro had easily seduced to his bed. He had promised the woman his complete protection, after explaining to the naive woman how Daenerys would be killed for resisting the warlocks, and the only way to survive was to side with him. Unfortunately for them anyway, Daenerys proved the power of her house's blood was more powerful than the warlocks and crushed them in the House of the Undying. After she reclaimed her 3 dragons, Daenerys along with Yora and the rest of her loyal Khalasar had confronted Zaro and Doria. For their betrayal, she had them locked up in an empty vault, the same empty vault Zaro had used to try and convince Daenerys was filled with vast wealth that would be her if she were to marry him. That had been months ago, and by now they were long dead from starvation. As for herself, she was currently being given a tour of the barracks housing the Unsullied slave army. The master of Astapor spent years training. At first Daenerys had no concept of what a slave army was or that one could even exist, since the concept of an army of slaves fighting for one person, without a reason, was foreign to her. But seeing them here for the first time was something she did not expect either. The Unsullied have stood here for a day and a night with no food or water. They will stand until they drop, such is their obedience, said the slave girl Missandei while she was walking in front of Daenerys and beside her master Krasny's Monaklas. They may suit my needs. Tell me of their training, said Daenerys, who on the advice of Yora she played the role of someone interested in buying a slave army, or at the very least a small contingent of bodyguards. The Westerosi woman is pleased with them but speaks no praise. To keep the price down, she wishes to know how they are trained, said Missandei in Old Valyrian, since it was standard practice to speak to the client in their language and translate in the other to her master. Since few in Westeros spoke such an ancient tongue, it also gave her master leeway to insult the client without them knowing it and act quite smug in the process, knowing she would provide a much politer version of his words. Tell her what she needs to know and be quick. The day is hot, said Master Krasny's in a sharp tone while he waved a fan at his face to keep the intense heat from the day from overwhelming him. They being their training at the age of 5 every day. They drill from dawn to dusk until they have mastered the short sword, the shield, and the 3 spears. Only 1 boy in 4 survives this rigorous training. Their discipline and loyalty is absolute. The Unsullied fear nothing, said Missandei, since she knew the routine by heart from seeing it herself and what her master had told her repeatedly to say to clients who visited with such questions in mind. Even the bravest of men fear death, remarked Yora, knowing many men who were all battle-hardened feared death in some capacity. The knight says even brave men fear death, said Missandei while Master Krasny's let a sneer appear on his tanned face. Tell the old man he smells like piss, commanded Master Krasny's rudely, with Missandei looking at him in shock and slight concern. Truly, Mast, said Missandei, but a sharp glance told to her, shut up and listen. No, not truly. Are you a girl or goat to ask such a thing, asked Krasny's with a hint of annoyance in his voice. My master says the Unsullied are not men like those you know. Death means nothing to them, replied Missandei to cover for her near slip, and knew she would soon pay for it later, depending on whether this woman before them bought any Unsullied to further prove the Unsullied were everything people claimed. Master Krasny showed their high tolerance for pain by walking over to one and cutting off the nipple. Daenerys was horrified at the sight, and even more so that the Unsullied who had been mutilated did not scream when others surely would. In his place, it became apparent to her that the pain the man had just gone through was minor compared to the other hardships he had gone through in his training. Just how much pain do they go through each day to the point where something like this means Absolutely nothing to them, thought Daenerys while seeing a fraction of men before her being turned into mere tools and weapons for war. To win as Shield and Unsullied must go into the slave market with a silver coin, find a newborn and kill it before its mother's eyes, said Missandei, with Daenerys looking even more horrified. A life of an innocent baby wasted at such a young age, all for that to test the soldier they were training had been conditioned to be without a mind or heart to call their own. What barbarism was this? You'd take a baby from its mother's arms, kill it as she watches, and then pay her for the trouble with a silver coin, asked Daenerys, with her disgust for the practice, and the sadness of the innocent babies lost in the process showing in her voice. She is offended. She asks if you pay the coin to the mother for her dead baby, said Missandei in Old Valyria to her master. What a soft mewing fool this one is, commented Master Krasnys, while his dislike of Daenerys being clear in his tone of voice. My master would like you to know the silver coin is paid to the baby's owner, not the mother, said Missandei, while Daenerys looked at the man with a glare. Even if the arrogant master didn't see it. How many do you have to sell? asked Daenerys, while seeing the woman translate, and the master held up 8 fingers, 1,000 unsullied per finger. Tell the Westerosi whore she has until tomorrow, commanded Krasnys, while knowing this woman was not the only client he had who wanted to buy unsullied, and as such did not have to give her any special treatment, not that he had to any of his previous clients in the first place. Master Krasnys asks that you please hurry, many other buyers are interested, translated Missandei, politely knowing that the woman in front of her would not be pleased to hear the exact wording of what Master Krasnys said. With their meeting concluded, master and slave girl walked away from the two and left them to decide on what to do about the unsullied. Yora knew what they were from a military standpoint, a means to an end, soldiers born, bred and trained to fight for the one who could afford it until the day these men died, their bloodline dying with them once their life ends. As for Daenerys herself, she instantly knew how many babies were ended to bring about the creation of this army of unsullied and the number of 8,000 slaves trained to fight for the master who bought them. 8,000 dead babies. How many lives were ended just to train these men to blindly obey their future master, said Daenerys in disgust. The unsullied are a means to an end, remarked Yora, with Daenerys not looking at all pleased by his choice of words. Once I own them, these men, whispered Daenerys quietly in sadness. They aren't men, not anymore. They stopped being men the moment the blade was put to the thing that made them male at the time of their birth, replied Yora sadly, knowing these soldiers wouldn't be able to know the intimacy with a woman. Once I own an army of slaves, what will I be, asked Daenerys, knowing history had a way of writing people as villains even when they weren't. You think these slaves will have better lives serving Krasnys and men like him, or by serving you will be fair to them? You will not mutilate them to make a point, you won't order them to murder babies, you will see them properly fed and sheltered. A great injustice was done to them, but you will undo it, not all of it, but enough to give them the dignity and the respect that they deserve, that they were denied all their lives, said Yora, with Daenerys thinking over his words in her head. Their attention was slightly diverted to a little girl playing with a ball nearby, and said girl, losing her grip on the object now rolling toward them. The girl smiled and motioned for Daenerys to pick it up, and saw the mother of dragons doing just that, only for a kunai to land between her and the ball. I wouldn't if I were you, remarked a figure less than 10 feet from them. Great sage, exclaimed Daenerys, while looking at him and then at the girl, who snarled at them and showed her teeth were not unlike those of the warlock in the House of the Undying. You made enemies among the warlocks after rescuing your dragons in the House of the Undying, though they should know better in taking what doesn't belong to them, replied Naruto calmly, while the fake child assassin fled from their sight. Should we pursue, asked Yora, while his hand was on the hilt of his sword. No, there's no point, besides we should focus on what just happened earlier with the Unsullied trying to build an army. I see, answered Naruto, with Daenerys nodding. We both know I need one. I can't return to Westeros as I am, and with what I have now for a Khalasar, replied Daenerys, with Naruto nodding in agreement. No argument there. Still, I can tell the idea of commanding a slave army does not appeal to you, as it shouldn't, since such an army is for the cruelest of people. All the same, you need the army regardless of your personal feelings about the Unsullied, said Naruto as he saw Daenerys thinking things over in her head. There's also the issue of paying for them. We have nowhere near enough money to buy 8,000 Unsullied soldiers, remarked Yora, knowing the fake gold used to get them a ship to Astapor wouldn't fool anyone here, since gold was looked at from top to bottom to ensure it was indeed the genuine element. There are other things one might use in place of the gold or silver, commented Naruto, while giving Daenerys a knowing look. You don't mean, questioned Daenerys after a moment of realization. Yes, I do. The masters will not turn such an opportunity down. To have one for 8,000 Unsullied, replied Naruto, with Daenerys not liking the idea. They will push for more than just one. Daenerys shot back, and you will tell them they get only one, not two. Not 3-1, make sure they know it's either one or none, said Naruto, knowing Daenerys held all the cards with what she had to trade with. If they can't have 3, the masters will want the biggest one, remarked Yora, since he had an idea of what they were currently discussing, and Daenerys here will agree. Also see if you can get the slave girl who translated for the master earlier, Missandei I believe, is her name. A woman like that knows many key things about Essos and what goes on here on this side of the world. A slave with her kind of responsibilities allows her to know things she didn't realize were so important to even know due to her status as a slave, replied Naruto, with Daenerys nodding. You do know neither of the 3 dragons will take too kindly in being departed from their mother, remarked Yora, with Naruto looking at him, and it was clear the masked man had a cruel smile behind it. I know, especially Drogon, he shows signs of a mean temper. If all goes according to plan, Daenerys will get her army and more, said Naruto while walking beside Yora and Daenerys. Not to be rude, great sage, but why are you here now of all times, asked Daenerys, while Naruto shrugged. I'm not really here. The real me is still in Westeros. You are talking to what is called a shadow clone, which is a copy of the real me when I am gone, whether through being killed or simply running out of energy. All my memories will go to the original. I was sent here to help take a more active role in what you are doing here in Essos, said Naruto, with Daenerys looking surprised by this. Did something happen in Westeros to make you want to take a more active part in this game we are in, asked Daenerys, with Naruto sighing. The real me has come to the conclusion that standing by to watch things play out is not the best thing to do right now. It was at first, but everything escalated out of control with the betraying, backstabbing, the war, the killings, the deaths, and overall violence. He was seeing frankly the real me had enough of it and decided it was time to with things in a more direct manner, answered Naruto while Yora frowned. Does this have anything to do with Stannis Baratheon being killed a few months ago, asked Yora suspiciously. Yes, let's just say he and the Red Woman did something that forced my hand in being more active, answered Naruto while his tone told the 2 people with him to leave it alone. Will you be with us when the deal is being made to buy the Unsullied, asked Daenerys curiously. Yes, I have more than enough energy to travel with you on your journey, not to mention aiding you in getting back to Westeros with the army needed to protect you, said Naruto, and left it at that. Will Ned Stark relinquish the Iron Throne and name me queen if I ask him, questioned Daenerys, with Naruto shrugging. It depends. You aren't the only candidate right now to sit on the damn chair, though he doesn't really care about it and just wants to rule over his house when legitimized, said Naruto, with Daenerys frowning. My competition for the Iron Throne is a bastard, asked Daenerys in disbelief. King Robert's oldest one, actually Gendry, I believe. Nice lad, a tad shy and uncertain, but it's to be expected given his life living in King's Landing as a bastard and never knowing who his father was until recently. Like I mentioned earlier, he doesn't care for the Iron Throne despite the option of becoming his father's legitimate heir. He'd rather be the future Lord of House Baratheon and seek to put the rest of his half-brother and half-sisters under his protection. So while you do have competition, the man in question will most likely step aside for someone more qualified to have it, answered Naruto, with Daenerys nodding. And what does Ned Stark have to say about Khaleesi, asked Yora, since he knew Ned Stark was the only one allowed to choose who would sit on the Iron Throne. I spoke with him on the issue. He holds no hatred for Daenerys or House Targaryen as a whole. His hatred died with the Mad King and Rhaegar Targaryen. In fact, when King Robert wanted you, Daenerys, here dead after learning of your pregnancy, Ned Stark was against it the entire way and wanted no part in any assassination attempts made soon after, replied Naruto, with Yora glancing over at his queen and then back at the masked man. So at best Ned Stark is neutral in regards to my claim on the Iron Throne, surmised Daenerys, with Naruto nodding. Indeed, but enough about that. We should rest and prepare for tomorrow when you have gained an army willing to fight for someone worthy. Also, I am going to assume, given your Targaryen heritage, you speak Old Valyrian and as such know what the master was really saying during your little meeting with him, replied Naruto before they left for the assigned dwellings they had acquired for the evening. I did, and considering what he said about me and everything else, I'm inclined to agree with your idea on how to get what I want from him, said Daenerys, with a smirk on her face. Dragonstone sometime later, Ser Davos Seaworth was beside himself. His lord and future king had been killed by the damn Red Woman. It was clear to Davos that whatever happened with the Shadow Demon he saw her spawn had not produced the results they were both hoping would happen. If they had, Renly Baratheon would be dead and a large portion of his army, not of House Tyrell, would now be under Stannis' command. But as things were, the army Renly had gathered of roughly 100,000 men still served the youngest of 3 Baratheon brothers and the only one among them still alive, and to make things worse, those who once followed Stannis had left him to join up with Renly to further bolster the man's army. Those that remained around Dragonstone were the ones converted into fanatics and had still believed in the Lord of Light, his own son Mados being among them, but that was not what truly bothered Ser Davos so much as the aftermath of Stannis' death and the dissolving of his army. Noah's concern was the life of Lady Shireen Baratheon and to a lesser extent the girl's mother, but mainly Shireen was his greatest concern. The girl had been good to the old Onion Knight, never teasing him or making fun of his various problems like not knowing how to read. If anything, she wanted him to learn how to read and thus not be considered lower than others who could or had a higher station than himself. And right now she was vulnerable assassins and religious fanatics seeking the life of a child in the belief it would grant them the power to return Stannis or the Red Woman back to life. Ser Davos, it's a miracle, said one of the knights in the castle. What has happened? Asked Davos while looking fearful regarding whatever was considered a miracle these days. It's Lady Shireen, she's replied the knight while not being able to finish his sentence. What has happened, man? Spit it out. Or so help me, I'll beat your bloody ass to death, commanded Davos while grabbing the man by his shoulder armor. It's her face, it's healed, exclaimed the knight with Davos frowning. Healed? Questioned Davos in confusion. Yes, it is completely healed, no more grayscale. Lady Celis, can't believe it, none of us can. Clearly the Lord of Light has granted King Stannis' daughter a miracle, replied the knight while Davos frowned. King Stannis is dead, and by the hands of the Red Woman. Whoever or whatever healed Lady Shireen, the Lord of Light had nothing to do with it, replied Davos before he went to see the girl himself. Ser Davos, you are back, exclaimed Shireen happily in the main hall of Dragonstone with a big smile on her face as she ran from her mother to him and gave the man a big hug. My lady, though I come back with bad news. I don't know if you heard it, but your father is dead, replied Davos sadly while seeing the little girl's eyes become saddened by the news. Impossible, Stannis is the Lord of Light's chosen as champion, protested Celis angrily at Davos for speaking such nonsense. He was killed by the Red Woman. They were found dead together in their war tent with stab wounds in both of their bodies, said Davos while Celis was in shock and took a few steps back. But Stannis, he the Lord of Light, whispered Celis while seemingly going into a catatonic state. It was the great sage, replied Shireen at last. What? Asked Davos while leaning down to look at her. The great sage visited me in my room using his magic. He healed my face. He also told me of my father's death, said Shireen while Davos saw she had eyes of acceptance. When in regards to her father's death, he told you of your father's death? Asked Davos carefully with Shireen nodding. Yes, he said father and the strange Red Woman had an argument over using her magic in a dishonorable way that my father was not going to stand for it any longer, replied Shireen, with Davos not saying anything for a moment before giving her a small smile. That sounds just like your father, replied Davos while giving the girl another hug. I'll miss him. Father might have been cold, but he was a good man deep down. I know he loved me despite what happened to my face, replied Shireen with Davos nodding. Stannis did love you. People can say your father is many things, but no one can say he didn't love you, my lady, said Davos while he saw Shireen smiling again. I have already contacted Uncle Renly and asked for peace between us. I do not wish to fight him, and we do not have the might to oppose his army. I know he is a good man and will accept it, replied Shireen with Davos nodding in agreement, since Renly was a fair man and wouldn't harm his innocent niece. After excusing himself to his own quarters, Ser Davos locked the door to his room and looked out the window to see land around him that was Dragonstone. It had been and still was a terrifying fortress taken from the Targaryens when King Robert was waging his war and rebellion against them. I know you are here. I may not have magic in my blood or the skill for it, but I know a man well enough to know when I'm about to be paid a visit, said Davos at last before turning around a few seconds later and saw the masked sage himself standing there. You're a smart man. I knew you could read between the lines during a conversation with someone, remarked Naruto with Davos looking at him in anger. I may be unable to read books, but reading people is a skill few in my position can claim to possess, said Davos while keeping his anger in check. Indeed, Shireen spoke only positive things about you when we talked. She clearly wants you to reach your full potential in life. Lady Shireen will even help make that happen if it's within her power, replied Naruto calmly with Davos's eyes going soft at the mention of the girl. She's a bright light in this dark place. Such joy at seeing friends and family when they enter the room. I curse the day someone tries to end her life and remove such light from the world, said Davos while giving Naruto a knowing look. Calm yourself, Ser Davos. I have no intention of killing Lady Shireen, not when I spent the time to heal her face of the grayscale, remarked Naruto calmly. Yet you killed King Stannis and made it look like the Red Woman had done it, accused Davos with Naruto shrugging in a so what type manner. Considering what Stannis had the Red Woman recently do, he deserved to die for his crimes. They both did. After what they tried to pull against Renly, you know what he did, Ser Davos. I know you did. Even now the stench of the Red Woman and the energy she released when birthing the Shadow Demon still lingers on you, countered Naruto with Davos looking pale. Now I see, so you know I was there. Is that why you were here to kill me too, asked Davos while reaching for his sword. No, I have no intention of ending your life here today, Ser Davos Seaworth. Why would I? Lady Shireen Baratheon adores you, and she no doubt will need your guidance in the years to come as her most trusted of advisors. Why would I bring more sadness to that little girl than I already have with the death of her father, replied Naruto, with Davos slowly removing his hand from his sword but still eyed the masked man carefully. So why are you here to gloat? Tell me that Stannis was mad and the red woman was a fucking cunt I should have killed when I had the chance, asked Ser Davos, with Naruto shaking his head. No, nothing like that. I am here to see that you understand the reasons for my actions. Word will get out about Stannis and his kinslaying attempt on Renly, his honor tainted at the highest level by his actions, that the only alternative is the wall, to live in shame, or to the executioner's block, where you will die in shame. My actions in covering up what I did will at least remove the original taint of his actions for the most part, so long as we stay silent on the issue. Lady Shireen will not know further pain from her father's ambitious actions, and House Baratheon will not be sullied further for it, explained Naruto, with Ser Davos nodding his head. I understand it, but that doesn't mean I have to fucking like it. Davos shot back. I know, Ser Davos, I didn't want to do that to Shireen, but her own father was willing to kill his own brother for a claim to the Iron Throne. Does that really sound like a good king to you? If Stannis was willing to go that far to try becoming king of Westeros, do you really think he will be good for the small folk, the same small folk who would be made sacrifices for the Lord of Light? We both know many would suffer under Stannis' rule, and even more with Melisandre at his side whispering into his ear. Could you stand by and let her do that? Ser Davos let the red woman whisper into his ear how heretics and non-believers throughout the Seven Kingdoms should burn in the name of the Lord of Light, to be similar to the Mad King in his fascination with fire, questioned Naruto, with Davos looking away. No, I couldn't stand by and watch that woman destroy Stannis. I would kill her even if it meant my death in the end, so long as the king I served was safe, replied Davos, while Naruto smiled. A good man one needed to help Shireen become the Lady of Dragonstone. I know she can be when older, said Naruto with approval in his voice. I know Lord Renly to be a good man. Many would not flock to him if he wasn't one, but in your own opinion, will he spare Shireen from being punished for her father's actions? Questioned Ser Davos with worry. Of course, she's an innocent girl who has done nothing wrong to her uncle and all of this family infighting. You will protect Shireen here in Dragonstone, and I will keep an eye on Renly on my end in case he does try something, despite the unlikely possibility of it ever happening, said Naruto, with Davos nodding. Right, I suppose it helps to be prepared. Even if nothing does happen, it's better than the alternative of something happening and not being ready for it, replied Davos, knowing in his own experience it was for the best. Spoken like a man who has learned to have a sharp mind and a wit to match. I will see you around, Ser Davos, said Naruto before vanished seconds later. Fucking magic, whispered Davos to himself before letting out a sigh. With Tywin Lannister, the Lord of Casterly Rock and Warden of the West, was not happy, not in the slightest. Since this war began, things have been going down for House Lannister. The North had brought all its banners together to wage war with his army, and the North was winning too. Make things worse, House Baratheon was amassing their armies, and the victor of that internal house struggle would march against him, and to make matters worse, they had his son Jaime in their hands, and were not going to give him up anytime soon. And to his surprise, it was Renly Baratheon of all people who won over Stannis, though the way it happened was an even greater surprise, and so was the failed tactic Stannis had used to kill his own brother. Who would have thought the second eldest Baratheon would have it in him to make an attempt at killing his own brother? Even Tywin in his darkest of days never considered the idea or notion of killing his own brother Kevan, and he could safely say the same for his brother. Then again, the Red Woman from Essos might have something to do with that particular sinful move on Stannis' part, but the fact this war is not going to go in our favor, with Renly having the numbers needed to crush my army, doesn't help either, thought Tywin with his tired eyes, looking at table that held his map showing the armies currently put in position at different places throughout the Seven Kingdoms. Renly's army had grown and would soon move to fight beside the North, who had sent a sizable portion of their forces back north to defend it from the Ironborn. From what he could gather, House Greyjoy's attempts to crush the North had failed miserably so far, thanks to the army sent back defending the key places where the enemy would land to do their raiding, pillaging, raping, and other vile acts the Kraken was known for when they attacked others. There was also the issue of Holster Tully's health going on a decline, and it wouldn't be long before the man finally died and his son Edmure Tully became the Lord of Riverrun. If anything, the North would move its army back to pay tribute to Holster Tully at his funeral when the elderly man eventually died. So Tywin would gain a small reprieve from that. Unfortunately, the new issue of Renly Baratheon and his army marching against him would make it a very short reprieve. If anything, news of Renly's army marching against House Lannister would no doubt make many within his own army abandon him in the hope of being shown mercy by Renly when surrendering. In short, House Lannister was losing, and losing badly. He needed a miracle. You look like you've seen better days, Lord Tywin Lannister, remarked Naruto, While appearing out of nowhere I would normally call for my men, but something tells me you have blinded them with your magic before your coming in here and us having this very conversation, replied Tywin calmly, though he was anything but calm right now considering I want this conversation to stay between us. I think it would be best not to have any unwanted interruptions, said Naruto, with Tywin nodding before he motioned for the sage. Sit down across from him. I would think you were here to kill me. But the fact I am still alive within a minute of your arrival means you are here to talk, surmised Tywin, with Naruto nodding. Yes, I got Tyrion's letter. He wants peace between the warring houses of Westeros and an end to the bloodshed, something I think you wouldn't mind having considering how badly this war has been for your house in particular, replied Naruto, with Tywin letting out a sigh. My army has lost one engagement after the next. The North has my son getting support from King's Landing when called for, while Ned Stark sits on the Iron Throne as Regent. Renly Baratheon has his own massive army joining the king in the north to combat my own, all the while my daughter and her grandson have weakened my position back in Lannisport until my youngest child took over, remarked Tywin, while keeping out just how expensive this war had become for his house. With no gold left in the mines all House Lannister did now was spend their money, but never made it back. Even the debt King Robert made could be considered void due to the war between House Lannister and House Stark. Now that Ned Stark was running things in King's Landing, meaning peace is the best way for all sides to come out of this alive, something I want to happen. This war should have never happened in the first place, replied Naruto, with Tywin glaring at him. Of that we can agree. My grandson was meant to be king of the Seven Kingdoms, but you along with Ned Stark convinced Robert on his deathbed that none of Cersei's 3 children were his own, that she had conspired with others to murder the late hand of the king Jon Arryn and other things against the North itself, countered Tywin, with Naruto looking somewhat amused. And being the loving father you are to your children, you don't believe for one moment that your daughter could have done the things she is accused of doing, surmised Naruto, with Tywin scowling further. I know they haven't. My children know better than to challenge me on this, all 3 of them, countered Tywin, with Naruto shaking his head. Bran Stark saw your twins being intimate when King Robert was in the north and was pushed out of a tower for it. Grand Maester Pycelle and Peter Baelish conspired with your daughter to poison Jon Arryn because he learned the truth. Honestly, Tywin, I am actually a tad bit surprised you didn't see the truth, given the appearance of Joffrey, Tommen and Myrcella in appearances, all 3 of your grandchildren sporting blonde hair and eyes of a Lannister, not one Baratheon trait among them. What does that tell you, asked Naruto, with Tywin not looking the least bit amused. That the Lannister traits from my bloodline are stronger than those of a Baratheon from Robert's own, replied Tywin, before Naruto pulled out the book of lineages on the 4 great houses before handing it to him. Read it. All the Baratheons of Robert's ancestry, always the same. Jon Arryn saw it in all 20 of Robert's bastards, and even whispered the seed is strong before his death, replied Naruto, with Tywin frowning before he looked at the book and opened it to see King Robert's bloodline traits as a Baratheon were indeed the same before Joffrey. This still proves nothing, and Bran Stark is clearly a troubled boy who saw something that wasn't real, countered Tywin before he threw the book on the table between the 2 men. Oh Tywin, who are you trying to make a believer here, me or you? We both know the traits of your grandchildren can only happen if Cersei was with another man who had the same hair and eye-color-based traits at herself. Given how your daughter was guarded due to her title as queen, there's only one blonde-haired, green-eyed male capable of being the father, and that person just so happens to be her own twin brother, replied Naruto, with Tywin looking livid by his words. My children did not commit incest and have 3 bastard-born children as a result. They are many things, but not that, said Tywin in anger at the accusation. Even now you still don't believe me. I knew you were prideful, Tywin, but this is beyond what I expected of you. Denial and pride make strange bedfellows, remarked Naruto with a sigh. Says the demon sage who has allied with the Starks in usurping the Iron Throne from my daughter and grandson, challenged Tywin, with Naruto scoffing. Oh, get over yourself, Tywin. Has it ever occurred to you that perhaps the people doing what they are doing are actually doing it because they are right? That perhaps we are telling the truth? When has Lord Stark ever been called a liar or had his honor as a Stark questioned? When have I ever told you or anyone else something that wasn't true in the slightest? What do I gain from lying to you about this, Tywin? Nothing. What does Ned Stark gain from lying? Nothing. He doesn't want the damn throne, and neither do I. Robb Stark is basically king in the north right now, and if allowed to stay that way will rule in the north, not King's Landing. So, tell me, Tywin, why would we lie about this when it gains us nothing? Demanded Naruto, with Tywin about to speak but shut his mouth, and when he tried to speak again he shut it once more. Tywin Lannister knew the masked man was right. It was clear to him the sage and Ned Stark gained nothing from their supposed lie except a violent war. One they clearly did not want. One didn't want it because he had lived through 2 and didn't want a 3rd, and the other man sitting in front of the Lord of the Lannisters held no such ambition to see multiple houses clash against the other. You've made your point, whispered Tywin with an air of defeat in his tone of voice. I was hoping I would as to gain from this war with so many houses fighting each other. The answer is the late Lord Baelish. He has been planning this for years, ever since becoming Master of Coin on the Small Council, putting the crown in debt, gaining favors from the lords who uses many brothels, and blackmailing others. For the information he gets on them, the man planned to cripple many of the major houses through this war to eventually come out of it on top, maybe even become king in the end, just because his ambition alone has compelled him to do it, said Naruto while explaining to Tywin what else he found out about Baelish during their short time talking before ending the man's life. I see, so that is how he intended to hurt my house, not through having more men with swords under his command, but by gutting my coin purse through this war and the debt owed by the Iron Bank in the event House Lannister succeeded in taking the Iron Throne. If I wasn't so angry right now at being fooled by such conniving worm, I would actually feel some form of respect for the man, replied Tywin, since he always respected the art of strategy, even questionable strategy, and this was one of those things, which is why I'm trying to minimize the amount of damage he's done and keep the war from spreading out too far. Originally, I was only going to intervene at certain points, but recent events have forced my hand to be more active in my approach to this problem. I am not simply going to intervene at certain points anymore, Tywin. I intend to be on the front lines if necessary to get my point across for everyone, dancing to a Dead Man tune to make peace, said Naruto, with Tywin grimacing, since he knew that the sage in front of him being more active could mean more dead Lannisters. When and where should these peace talks take place, asked Tywin, knowing his pride as a Lannister would not do well here at King's Landing in 2 weeks from now, so you can get your necessary affairs in order. You are to come with a personal escort of 10 men as your bodyguards, no more no less. The same will be asked of both Renly Baratheon and Robb Stark. You will also bring 2 of your children, Cersei and Tyrion, with you to these peace talks, because it involves them too. Joffrey as well, since from what I hear he's been a bad little false king in training under his mother's ever watchful eye. Your brother Kevin Lannister will stay behind to keep the remaining Lannister army in check. I know Armory Lorch has been captured recently by Robb Stark. Will bring Jaime, since they have him prisoner. They will be bringing both of them here to face justice for his crimes against Riverrun. On your orders. Don't look at me like that. Varys and his little birds told me as much, so don't even try bothering to deny it. You gave the order for that little stunt in order to draw out Ned Stark onto the battlefield. It only failed due to an injury he got fighting your son Jaime, replied Naruto, with Tywin now sighing and muttering curses regarding Varys and his little birds, knowing things they shouldn't. I understand Jaime, Cersei, and even Joffrey needed for this meeting, but why Tyrion? Out of all my children, I was under the impression he was the only one you liked during your time traveling with him, questioned Tywin, with Naruto nodding, since the dwarfish man had a considerable mind and wit to match when not drowning it in wine. And I still do, but I also believe Tyrion should be there, since this is a family affair involving him as well, given how he was used by others to help cause the sparks intended to kickstart a war. Whether you accept him as such or not, Tyrion Lannister is still your son. Excluding him would be an insult to his person and make others believe he is of no importance when it comes to being a Lannister, something which we know is not true, said Naruto, with Tywin nodding. Tyrion has proven his worth in ruling Lannisport well. From what my agents there have reported to me, my youngest son has gained back the loyalty of the people in the city, and they will remain loyal to my house for the most part so long as he is alive. He's far better at ruling than Cersei or Joffrey for that matter, remarked Tywin, with Naruto nodding. All the more reason to have him at the peace talks. He is a brilliant man when put in the right position, where his talents can be used properly. His mind is sharp when not clouded from too much wine and women. Both I understand he has been cutting back on since his appointment to ruling over Lannisport in your name, said Naruto, with Tywin smiling with a hint of pride, knowing his youngest was actually showing his potential for a change rather than squandering it. Can you guarantee us safe passage to King's Landing for the peace talks? asked Tywin, with Naruto nodding. I already talked it over with Ned Stark. Everyone at the meeting will follow the rules I set, since I am the only real neutral party in all of this. The meeting itself will take place in the Red Keep in the small council room. Ned Stark will of course be acting as regent and will be assisting in the mediations between House Baratheon and House Lannister. I will be handling things between House Lannister and House Stark to avoid any conflict of interest, answered Naruto, with Tywin nodding, since it was the best he could hope for in this case. There is a small issue regarding my nephew Lancel Lannister, my brother's son, added Tywin, with Naruto shaking his head. Lancel admitted to everyone his involvement in providing the pure potent wine Cersei gave him to give to King Robert to drink, which helped in murdering him on a hunt. The boy has already agreed to take the black to atone for his crimes, and was sent to the wall. At the very least your brother can visit his son After the peace between all of the warring houses has been resolved, is that reasonable, replied Naruto, with Taiwan nodded, since he knew it was the best option for his brother at this point. At least his nephew wasn't dead. Granted, he would have to forsake his titles and rights as a Lannister away, but it kept him off the executor's block. That was enough. I will tell him. Kevin has been concerned with his son's safety and feared for his life since the events in the throne room ended with your actions, remarked Tywin while he saw Naruto shrug. Family is important. I understand that. I respect that. I also know that your nephew was just a pawn in Cersei's plan to have Robert killed before Ned Stark could tell the man the truth about Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen not being his children. Family shouldn't use other family members as pawns for their personal ambitions, said Naruto firmly in that belief, and saw Tywin nod, since it was the kind of way of thinking that led to kinslaying. If that will be all, I need to make arrangements to prepare for what is to come in 2 weeks' time, said Tywin while Naruto got up and nodded. I understand. I will see you in 2 weeks. Should nothing impede the peace talks, if all goes well, fewer men have to die in the future and go back to their wives and children sooner, said Naruto before he vanished from Tywin's sight and the world around the Lord of House Lannister. Since the world was once again moving around him, King's Landing Red Keep small council room. From what I have heard from my little birds, all parties have agreed to the peace talks and are making preparations as we speak, said Varys with Ned nodding. I know my son will do what is asked of him. It's Renly and Tywin which concerns me, said Ned while Varys nodded. Agreed, which is why my birds are keeping a close eye on those two, and off chance they do try something. Lord Regent, though Tywin Lannister is more inclined to try anything once his son is secured, said Varys calmly, not to speak out of turn. But what about other places throughout the Seven Kingdoms? What of the Reach and House Tyrell? They married their daughter off to a man who they presumed would be king of the Seven Kingdoms and have one of their own become its queen. There's also the issue of House Aaron, with Lady Lisa demanding the sage's head for killing Lord Baelish despite Littlefinger's many crimes against the crown under King Robert's rule, remarked Ser Barristan, since many of these meetings surrounded one or both of the mentioned houses recently. The Tyrells won't mind. Renly and Lady Marjorie will eventually have a child together to further the relation between their houses. When they do, I'm sure said child, depending on the gender, will be put into some kind of arranged marriage, most likely into the royal family that will one day claim the Iron Throne, answered Naruto, since he was the one who had suggested this meeting to report the goods. And any other following it, the Tyrells have always enjoyed playing kingmaker so long as the king they put on the throne as a queen with Tyrell blood in it. The gods know they've nearly married into it with House Targaryen 2 generations back during Lady Marjorie's grandmother time with the Queen of Thorns herself, said Varys, since this was known to him long ago. Olenna Tyrell was smart not to marry a Targaryen, since Robert won the war and would have killed any child of Targaryen blood, she or her own children sired, remarked Ned with a sigh soon after, and wished to be back in the North again. Yes, no doubt Armory Lorch and the late Gregor Clegane would have had a hand in that particular action if given the chance, remarked Varys, while knowing those two were not shy in spilling the blood of men, infants, children and women. What of the Lords of the Vale? What will they do regarding Lady Lisa? Aaron, surely they know why Littlefinger was killed, asked Ned, since he knew the Lords of the Vale were loyal more to Jon Arryn than his wife Lisa. Surely they wouldn't fight in the name of one of the conspirators who killed the man they loyally served. From what my birds have told me about the Vale, they are currently stuck somewhere in the middle of obeying and disobeying the woman, mostly because of the hill tribes in the Vale currently causing them problems as of late since forming their alliance with the Lannisters when Tyrion came with them to see his father. Any move to topple Lady Lisa as the lady and ruler of the Vale until her son Robin comes of age would only make the hill tribes bolder in taking it over for themselves. At the same time, they do not wish to follow Lady Lisa's command to march here to claim the sage for his actions in killing one of the key conspirators in Jon Arryn's death, not only because they know it is wrong but because it leaves the Vale weakened to further attacks by the hill tribes there, said Varys with Naruto nodding. The woman has clearly lost her mind, which makes Lady Lisa all the more dangerous. She sent well over 24 assassins after me before today, with 5 of them being the ones belong to the many-faced men. I also wouldn't put it past her to try something in the near future around the time we have the peace talks. I suggest you keep some of your best birds on standby to report anything from the Vale in the near future, Varys, said Naruto with Varys nodding, since he had already sent a message back to report any major activity in the Vale regarding the deployment of their soldiers. There is one more issue that needs to be discussed. It's about Dorne and Prince Doran Martell wanting someone from there to come here to witness the trial of the Lannister twins and the incest bastard son of theirs, Joffrey. As you can imagine, they have a great deal to gain from such a thing and want to see a great deal of Lannister blood spilled for past crimes against their house, remarked Varys while Ned Stark frowned. No doubt Jaime will try to get out things with a trial by combat. Given his skills with a sword, he could succeed in that. Regard depending on who he faces, remarked Naruto, with Ned frowning. Further, they will be given a trial and the crimes they have committed will be announced for all to hear before any one of them can use that means to escape judgment, said Ned, as he wanted the Seven Kingdoms to know what these fiends had done to Robert the man's house Aaron, and to Ned personally. With any luck these peace talks and the trial will go smoothly without issue, remarked Naruto, but he had his doubts. How is Gendry doing in his studies? Asked Ned curiously, as it had been months since the boy was put under Naruto's wing to see if he was worthy of becoming a Baratheon. Gendry is doing well. The poor man still doesn't want the Iron Throne despite the offer and just wants to watch over his house when the time comes to be legitimized, replied Naruto, while spending more time with the young future Baratheon. On a lighter note, Sirio's training of Arya Stark was showing the girl had the skills to be good with a sword. Well, one meant for her gender and flexibility, namely her sword needle and the Bravosi water dance style, with a keen eye to help her know when to strike an enemy with it. It was finally time for Naruto take on another student in terms of kenjutsu after so long. And what of Daenerys Targaryen? Asked Ned, while Varys decided to speak this time. She is making her way through Essos. After escaping the city of Karth where they tried to take her prisoner, Daenerys made her way to the city of Astapor and was able to buy 8,000 unsullied, answered Varys, with Ned frowning. How could she purchase so many? Asked Ned curiously. She used one of her 3 dragons as currency. However, the woman soon showed the master in charge of them what her thoughts on creating an army of castrated slaves. Once the transaction was complete, she not only acquired an army of 8,000 unsullied soldiers, but ordered them to kill the other masters around them, convinced the unsullied to fight for her as free men, and even had the dragon itself apparently burn the master she had dealings with upon her command before returning right back to Daenerys, said Varys, while Ned frowned at the mention of the dragons. Where is she going now? Asked Ned, since he knew Daenerys was a possible candidate for ruling the Iron Throne, but also a threat if she chooses to take it by force further into Essos. I believe from what my birds were able to determine she plans to free the land around her of slaves and gain followers at the same time, perhaps even try her own hand at ruling Essos for a time before coming here to make the claim to the Iron Throne, answered Varys, with Naruto nodding. My shadow clone was able to convince Daenerys to try her hand at ruling over Essos, or at least part of Essos, once she establishes herself there with my help. I figured that if she was going to rule Westeros one day, the woman should damn well gain some experience before trying it here, replied Naruto, knowing Ned would eventually find out about his involvement on the matter sooner or later. Can you guarantee she won't try to be violent should she want the Iron Throne? Asked Ned curiously, since he didn't want to call for men to fight against a Targaryen, much less one with 3 dragons. Yes, if anything happens, my shadow clone can intervene when necessary. Even if it were somehow killed, all the memories leading up to the shadow clone's death would be transferred back to me, and I can personally act accordingly within a mere matter of seconds, said Naruto, with Ned nodding. Fair enough, we will leave Daenerys Targaryen alone for now. Let's focus on the issues closer to home, commanded Ned, before they went over other issues pertaining to King's Landing, the Iron Islands being repelled by the North, the Wall, and other major issues pertaining to the Seven Kingdoms. With any luck, peace would be made available to the realm, if only for a short time. Time skip 2 weeks went by slowly, almost painfully slow. Word reached everyone about the now declared ceasefire between all warring parties. During that time no one side had attacked the other yet, despite that everyone was still on edge. House Starks, House Lannister, House Baratheons, and House Tyrell were all on edge. Even the Brotherhood without banners was surprisingly silent, as they wished to see peace return to the Seven Kingdoms, and any attack by them could further provoke more fighting that would harm the small folk. Still, some thought they should attack now while the other side was standing down, but others in each camp pointed out how the great sage himself had dictated the terms and wished them carried out. Many on all sides knew of Naruto's power, had either witnessed it or heard about it from stories long past from previous battles, with some tales being a bit more exaggerated than others. Still, Naruto's title as sage was enough to keep the scheming parties within all the camps at bay, since no one wanted to incite the wrath of the three-eyed masked man. Not that it mattered to one Cersei of House Lannister or her son Joffrey. The moment the ceasefire happened and made known throughout the Seven Kingdoms, Tywin had felt the best option here was to move his forces back to Lannisport. Reports during this time of 2 weeks ceasefire leading to the peace talks made the move acceptable, since Holster Tully had passed away within the 3rd day of it being in effect. Robb Stark had called all of his men back as well to pay respect to his grandfather on his mother's side of the family. While the funeral was happening at Riverrun for Holster Tully, one Tywin Lannister had decided to make good on his end of things and held a meeting with his family about the situation regarding the war. Naturally, he was met with resistance from certain family members. Lannisport small council room. You can't be serious, father. Making peace with the Starks, the Baratheons, and the Tyrells. This ceasefire is the perfect chance to crush them, protested Cersei angrily at her father agreeing to the ceasefire and the peace talks. In 2 weeks' time we should send our armies out and kill them all. I just wish we had the mountain to maim, rape, and kill our enemies, added Joffrey, while Tywin scowled at him. Ever since Tywin had returned to Lannisport with his army behind him, Cersei, along with Joffrey, had been under the impression that he would simply remove Tyrion from his position and they would have everything back to normal, back to putting his youngest son down, spoiling Cersei with gold and power while using it to spoil Joffrey. They were dead wrong, of course, much to their shock and horror. If anything, Tywin told Tyrion just how proud he was with his performance as Lord of Lannisport in his stead, and how he played it smart to have Myrcella sent to Dorne in an arranged marriage to Prince Dorian's only son when the war was looking its darkest for House Lannister. By sending Myrcella to Dorne, it helped ensure at least one member of House Lannister lived on. Granted, his granddaughter was a bastard child born of incest, but like Tommen, he saw none of the darkness in her like he now did with Joffrey. There was something wicked in that boy's eyes that could easily be compared to the Mad King with his desire to hurt others. Tywin was soon reminded of the letter the sage sent him during the march to Lannisport about Cersei and Joffrey. This is why incest-based children should not happen. Tywin, chances are they will go crazy. You were just fortunate to have 2 out of 3 of them stay sane. The Targaryens practiced this act on more than one occasion, and look where it got them. Half of their children went mad. You know Viserys Targaryen, he went mad like his father and could not keep his temper under control either. The end result was his death. If you don't rein in Joffrey, he will cause the downfall of your house in the years to come, and Cersei will let him do it. She has a madness in her as well. The only difference is this madness was born from the pain of loss over the death of her mother, your wife, and the intense hatred for Tyrion she has in the belief it was his fault. It wasn't. Many children have been known to cause complications in the birth process, and not all of them are physically like Tyrion. Sadly, Cersei wouldn't care and would simply deny it even if the truth was staring her right in the face. The woman believes all things not from House Lannister must either be destroyed or claimed by your house to be used as sex fit. Your daughter is fueled by greed and lust for whatever it is her heart desires in life. Your daughter has channeled her insanity into following her up to this point. The fact her husband Robert Baratheon was unfaithful for most, if not all, of their entire marriage and siring 20 bastard children didn't help much either. However, her own ambition for being the queen and staying the Queen of Westeros are in perfect alignment with her insanity, so Cersei is able to hide it from most, including you. She can't stand the idea of being replaced as queen and all the perks that come with it: the overall wealth, the ability to command others to do things they don't want to do, and of course the power the title provides is what Cersei covets. She will do just about anything and everything in her power to keep such things under her direct control, hence why she tries to manipulate Joffrey into doing whatever she wants, but sometimes it doesn't work and has to scramble some plot or ploy to counter his actions. Never once does she try to make an attempt at stopping him from doing what he wants, and has only weakened his actions discreetly while playing the loving mother to him so he doesn't lash out at her and lose control over his mind. Make no mistake about it, Lord Tywin, your daughter Cersei is not sound of the mind, and neither is Joffrey. If allowed to run about unchecked, they will cause the downfall of your house from which it will never return from. Do not take chances with them. Do not show them a hint of mercy or remorse when having them restrained for the trip to King's Landing. Tommen is a good lad, and I sense he will do great things with a proper teacher to guide him. Myrcella is also a good child. None of the wickedness of her mother is in that one either. You got lucky with those 2, so treasure them, despite how they were born, and love them anyway. I know this is going to be hard on you, but this is for the good of the realm and for your house, with Tyrion being the one to help save it. If you truly want peace and a chance for House Lannister to rise and be redeemed for its past sins, do what is asked of you here, Lord Tywin the Sage. That letter had been painful to read, but the words were no less truthful enough. I will not hear advice from a bastard born of incest. You are only here to ensure my end of the deal for the peace talks and the trial awaiting the 2 of you happens, said Tywin, while Cersei and Joffrey looked shocked by this. Trial me, Joffrey? You are putting us both on trial? Asked Cersei, while Tyrion was a bit surprised. No, I'm not putting you or Joffrey on trial, and you should thank the gods for that. My version of a trial would be to put you and your bastard son to the sword right now for being what you were in my eyes. The actual trial itself will be held in King's Landing in front of everyone. Myself, the Tyrells, Starks, and even House Martell, to name a few, will be there. You, along with Jaime and Joffrey, will be judged for your past crimes against the people, the crown, under the late King Robert's rule, but also House Lannister for the incest with Jaime, replied Tywin, with Cersei glaring at him. Crimes? What crimes? The crime of loving my family, my children, my son who was supposed to be the future king, my house, my brother. Jaime questioned Cersei, with Tywin not looking amused by her protest. Your definition of loving your family and your brother Jaime are considered offensive to me and just about everyone else in this room, said Kevin Lannister, now while keeping his anger barely in check at this woman for using his son Lancel for her schemes. Not to ask a stupid question, but what is to become of young Tom, and surely he is not going to be punished the crimes of his parents siring him, asked Tyrion, since he didn't care if the poor boy's parentage was a sin in the eyes of the gods so long as his nephew was a good person. No, Tommen will be staying here in Lannisport for the time being and will still keep the Lannister name until told otherwise. Kevin will watch over him for the time being and be in charge of the army while we ride for King's Landing. The stain on our house must be dealt with immediately. Jaime will be brought to King's Landing with Robb Stark's own group, replied Tywin, while Cersei looked livid, and so did Joffrey. Well, at least he will be saved from being destroyed in all of this, thought Tyrion happily, since his youngest nephew didn't deserve to be hated for this. Take Cersei and Joffrey away, keep them confined to their rooms before we depart for King's Landing with our escort, commanded Tywin, with his men restraining Cersei and Joffrey before they were taken out of the small council room. Do you really think we can acquire the necessary peace with our enemies, asked Kevin worriedly, since he did wish to see his son again. Depending on the situation and demands made during the talks, I think we can, though I think the only one capable of talking to them properly is Tyrion, replied Tywin, with his youngest son looking at him in shock. Me negotiating? I know the sage wants me there for the peace talks and maybe for the trial, but I hardly think participation during the former will be required on my part. Are you sure I am the man you want for this assignment? Protested Tyrion, while Tywin just looked at him for a second and then sighed. Tyrion, I know my overall treatment of you as my son over the years has not been what one would consider to be pleasant, started Tywin, while looking like he was about to eat something an animal had just shit on. That's putting it mildly, thought Tyrion, but kept his tongue in check. At first I hated you for what your birth caused in terms of your mother's death. I even admit to wanting to kill you myself, for the believed stain created against the woman I loved following your birth, but I stayed my hand each time the thought came up because I knew it was wrong, and you, for all of your physical deformity, are my son. You are a Lannister, said Tywin, with Tyrion not sure if he should feel insulted or pleased by his father's words. Probably both. He tends to do that with people, thought Tyrion, while seeing his father let out yet another tiring sigh. As time progressed, I believed you were a failure for a Lannister, and of my own blood no less, only made my feelings toward your existence worse, and I saw you spend your days drinking, whoring, and occasionally reading books in the library. In short, I thought you were a waste of a life the gods saw fit to bring into the world, said Tywin, with Tyrion frowning. Now, if he is trying to apologize for years of neglect on his end, the least father could do was put my past actions in a slightly better light, though I doubt I will get that much, thought Tyrion, while Kevin sent an apologetic look towards him. It is only recently I have come to see my belief in you being a failure was a mistake on my part. One failed to see you had an inquisitive and intellectual mind that, when put to good use in a position of power, flourished where others would flounder. While your own vices are questionable in terms of drinking and whoring, there are those who have worse tastes. Not only that, but these vices have indeed been reduced considerably, no doubt, when I gave you control of Lannisport during the war and the time you were here. The people in the city went from mutinous to supportive of House Lannister. The sage himself told me how highly he thinks of you and that I reflect on your strengths as a Lannister. Strengths I have been blinded from seeing on account of my hatred for you growing up, continued Tywin, with Tyrion being a bit surprised by the praise from his father, but by the sage himself he's not wrong. Tyrion, you have shown remarkable management skills in governing the people of this city when it was just Cersei and Joffrey ruling. The people were practically ready to revolt. You showed all the traits of a Lannister in terms of how to rule the lands around us, replied Kevin, with Tyrion smiling at him, which is why I want you to lead the negotiations on behalf of House Lannister. Seeing me at the table when the peace talks come will only make things difficult, but you, on the other hand, are a man who knows how people think after having one simple conversation with them for these talks to bring peace and survival of our house. It needs someone who won't provoke anger at those across the table, explained Tywin, while seeing his son smile further. I would be honored to do this. I want peace with our enemies and the survival of our house. I know many on the opposition will most likely want terms in which we are bled dry in various aspects, but I will do what I can to ensure if we do give concessions they are fair and do not bring any shame to House Lannister, replied Tyrion, with Tywin and Kevin smiling. Now good. Perhaps when this is all over we can discuss your future as the Lord of Casterly Rock and being the future Warden of the West, offered Tywin, with Tyrion nodding and happy to hear that. I look forward to having that conversation, replied Tyrion, while holding a goblet filled with wine and held it up to toast his father for the decision. Riverrun. At the moment, currently Robb Stark was sitting at a table with several of his commanders, his mother, his uncle Edmure Tully, and great uncle Blackfish Following the funeral of one Holster Tully, Catelyn had been filled with sorrow knowing her father had died, and during a time of war no less. It also made her brother Edmure Tully the new Lord of Riverrun, though it was clear the man had an arrogance about him and made their uncle want to smack him around for it. Some time right before the ceasefire began, several of my lieutenants with their forces were able to kill several Lannister men, and took the stone mill the army was stationed around. It may have some bearing, commented Edmure, while his uncle, known by many as the Blackfish, didn't look amused. Why don't you shut up about the damned mill and don't call him nephew, he is your king, said Blackfish at his nephew with a glare to match his tone. Rob knows I meant no disrespect, uncle, began Edmure, but his uncle once again had no patience for him. You're lucky I'm not your king, I wouldn't wave your blunders around like a victory flag, exclaimed the Blackfish, while Edmure grimaced slightly. My blunder, as you call it, uncle, allowed us to capture the Lannister pig of a man Amory Lorch before he could get a chance to scurry back to Lannisport or Casterly Rock with his piggy tail between his legs. King Rob understands that we're not going to win this war if he's the only one winning battles. Besides, there's plenty of glory to go around in a war like this, commented Edmure, while Rob glared at him. This is not about glory, this is about justice, and bring it down upon those who would try to flee from its grasp. You were supposed to wait for further instructions, or wait until Amory Lorch came to you. It was only blind luck and catching him by surprise that you even succeeded in capturing the man. Rob nearly shouted at his uncle, who looked a bit uncomfortable, and the Blackfish looked like he was ready to punch the new Lord of Riverrun in the face. I seized an opportunity and it paid off in the end, countered Edmure, while Rob sighed angrily. I wanted him to come to us, not the other way around. If we drew him deeper to our side we would have had a better advantage and fewer of our men would be dead right now. Instead you charged in without orders, lost more men than we should, and all I have to show for it outside of our prisoner is a stone mill, replied Rob, with Edmure looked a bit insulted, but it was clear those around him saw their king's point. We also took hostages Willem Lannister and Martin Lannister, added Edmure, while Rob scoffed at the mention of these so-called hostages. Willem Lannister and Martin Lannister are 14 years old, remarked Rob, knowing the boys were squires at best and hardly worth the effort of being considered valuable. Martin is 15 years old. I believe both boys are squires, nothing more, added Blackfish, while glancing at his nephew with a "you are such an idiot" look on his face. We have had Jaime Lannister for months now under careful watchful eyes, and Tywin Lannister didn't move for peace. During that time did you really think he would sue for peace sooner because we now have his father's brother's great-grandsons, questioned Rob, with Edmure now starting to see things from his perspective. No, replied Edmure quietly. How many men did you lose in the attack, asked Rob, while dreading the answer. 208 men, but for every man we lost a Lannister, answered Edmure, but was soon silenced by Rob's fist smashing against the table. Those 208 men could be alive now instead of rotting in the ground, exclaimed Rob furiously, while Edmure looked guilty over it. I'm sorry, I didn't know, replied Edmure, while Rob's face was still holding a scowl. You would have right here at the gathering if you had been patient, stated Rob, with Edmure looking away from the younger man's angry face. We seem to be running out of patience here, especially now with the impending peace talks at King's Landing. You are meant to attend. It's making everyone go on edge. You spend so much time fighting that when it's time to actually stop you almost forget how to put down your sword, remarked Blackfish sadly. A problem we need to fix, added Rob with a sigh, before a ripple in the air around them was felt and Naruto appeared in a nearby chair. I couldn't agree more, Rob, replied Naruto, while his sudden appearance shocked both Edmure and the Blackfish for a second. Great sage, what are you doing here, asked Catelyn, while seeing the masked man sit down in a nearby chair. To pay my respects to the late Holster Tully. I would have been with the crowd, but I didn't want my presence to distract from why everyone was here for the funeral. I liked Holster, he was a good man. Good men are hard to come by during these dark times, answered Naruto with a sigh, since that was the problem with being a long-living person. Everyone you know tends to die one way or another. Thank you for coming. I'm sure my father would have appreciated you attending his funeral, replied Catelyn, while Naruto nodded. I also came here because of the two boys you recently captured and mentioned just now. I plan to return them to their family in Lannisport, added Naruto, while the group in front of him looked shocked. Why we can use them during the negotiations with Jaime, gain some additional gold or wealth from House Lannister for their safe return, offered Edmure, while Naruto glared at him. You are an idiot. The two boys and their worth during the negotiations will be little to nothing. You will spend more resources taking care of them now over any financial return later during the peace talks. Besides, they are basically young children forced to fight in a war that should not have been started in the first place, and it's not like you need them anyway. Not with Jaime Lannister as your prisoner, replied Naruto, with Edmure reluctantly conceding as much. But Jaime Lannister is to be put on trial for his various crimes in King's Landing. Won't his value decrease knowing what awaits him there, asked Catelyn, with Naruto shaking his head. No, hardly. Tywin will no doubt want Jaime's crimes to be pushed aside. and have his son live to serve at the wall. The man will lose out in having his eldest son be his heir, but this allows him to live all the same, replied Naruto, knowing that was the best option that Tywin and Jaime were going to get. Not if Jaime calls for trial by combat. Depending on who he faces, the man might just win his freedom, replied Robb, with Naruto shaking his head. Unlikely. Even if it does come down to trial by combat, Jaime will have to face me, and we all know how that will turn out, replied Naruto, with the group looking surprised by this. Does Tywin know this? Asked Caitlyn, while wondering if Tywin ever considered this possible outcome for his son. Maybe even if he doesn't, I'm sure it's an outcome he has considered. The man isn't an idiot, Caitlyn. He knows Jaime well enough to realize what his son will do should the opening for such a move present itself, which is why I'm going to let the two talk things out before the trial even starts. If there's one with him, I think we can all agree it's high time this Lannister not only pays his debts but also faces his sins, answered Naruto, while knowing this was a long time coming between father and son in House Lannister. It's going to be a grand affair. I'm not sure even Tywin can take the shame brought upon his house, remarked Blackfish, with Naruto looking at him. The shame brought to House Lannister that you speak of, Blackfish, was one of his twin children's own making, quite literally, when you consider how Joffrey turned out. Once this is resolved, I'm hoping the coming peace will give all the houses a chance to heal properly, replied Naruto, with Robb and Caitlyn looking uneasy. We may have one more minor problem to deal with after the peace talks, replied Robb, before sighing. What minor problem? Asked Naruto with a frown. Walder Frey, answered Caitlyn, with Blackfish scowling at the name. He's a fucking cunt, grumbled Blackfish to himself, though everyone heard him. Uncle, exclaimed Caitlyn, what, the man is a fucking old cunt. His only great accomplishment to date has been siring more bastards than Robert Baratheon. Even now the only remaining muscles in his body still working are his mouth, his brain, and his cock. Don't tell me you didn't see how the man acted with the women at the Twins and not be disgusted, challenged Blackfish, with Caitlyn frowning but did not dispute his words. What is the issue with Walder Frey? Asked Naruto, with Robb sighing and explaining how he broke the promise, the one his mother made for him, of marrying one of Walder Frey's daughter, and married the female healer who was also a foreigner. I know as a king I should honor my promises, but this woman Talisa, I felt the moment I met her there was something about her, and what I feel in my heart, I am not ashamed I married her, said Robb with conviction in his voice. All the same, you have made an enemy of Walder Frey. He is not someone who will just take this offense against him lightly, warned Caitlyn, since she knew many lords would become angry by what Robb did in Walder Frey's place. I'm not about to apologize for being in love or marrying the woman I love. The deal was made through you. I never agreed to the marriage. At the very least you should have come back to the army to talk to me about the offer and whether or not to accept, said Robb, with Caitlyn grimacing. He's not wrong, Caitlyn. When making deals involving others, namely your son in this case, the mentioned person should be consulted and talked to before such a deal is truly made agreeable, said Naruto, with Caitlyn looking down in a way that told them she was sorry. It can't be helped now. It won't be long before Walder Frey sends his eldest sons here to discuss how Robb can make amends for this wound toward House Frey, said Caitlyn, with Naruto frowning now further and didn't like this development one bit, and for good reason. Walder Frey was a perverted piece of slime, some crude abomination of a man created by taking the worst parts of Orochimaru's and Jiraiya's vices before putting them all in a blender. The end result was Walder Frey. He had Orochimaru's ambitiousness and seeking out every advantage in any situation mixed with Jiraiya's perverted tendencies, though at a level beyond even the old super pervert. Naruto also knew that, like Orochimaru, the man currently ruling House Frey did not take offenses aimed against him lightly. Orochimaru had believed in crushing his opponents slowly, painfully, and patiently. If his years upon years of waiting for his old sensei and Hokage to become too old to win in a fight with him was any indication, in fact, Naruto surmised the entirety of House Frey was filled with snakes, all waiting for the oldest of them to eventually die so the next one could sit in the chair running things. They were about 2 scheming generations away from resorting to kinslaying if they did not secretly do it already in some manner, and backstab anyone to get what they wanted. Just meant he would have to deal with this instead of Robb. The man had a good head on his shoulders like his father, but neither had the means to sniff out a trap or betrayal when someone saw the benefits of it. I will deal with Walder Frey. The man respects only one thing, power, and those who have it and can give him more than anyone else. Walder will also see Robb's act of breaking his oath as an opportunity to gain favor with the Lannisters should he feel it is in his best interest to switch sides, especially if they can offer him more than Robb can in terms of paying for their services, said Naruto, with Caitlyn looking at him in shock. You are not suggesting that Walder Frey would break his oaths to House Tully and the Starks, questioned Caitlyn, with Naruto nodding. Walder Frey is a bitter old man, even more so with what happened with Robb marrying the woman he loves. The man will see it as an act of betrayal by House Tully and House Stark. I have little to no doubt the man plans to try Something later just to prove his point, and he won't tolerate any more offenses by anyone else, replied Naruto with Blackfish nodding in agreement. You may have known Walder Frye when you were a little girl, my niece, but the man has no honor and has no problem killing someone if it means extending his own life. I would wager he would side with the White Walkers if they promised to make him live longer, said Blackfish with Naruto nodding. Not the best way to describe Walder Frye, but no less accurate all the more reason to let me handle things with him from here on out, replied Naruto, knowing it was the only recourse here. And what if Walder Frye decides to get violent? Any act by him against House Tully or Stark will weaken us considerably. It might even make the Lannisters become bold and wanting to give less and take more during the peace talks, replied Edmure with Naruto now looking at him. If Walder Frye gets violent, it will be the last thing he or his house ever does, and I will see to it that the twins will nothing more than a memory, stated Naruto coldly before he was gone via Kamui. I don't think I could ever get used to seeing him do that, remarked Blackfish while he saw the others nod in agreement. Elsewhere, Talisa was working on the two Lannister children and tending to their wounds while they looked at her and the armed men behind the woman fearfully. They had been squires in the last battle, both wounded yet captured. All the same, neither boy thought they would be in this sort of situation, given they were not only Lannisters but also simple squires of the knights serving their house, only to one day find themselves in a battle for the army they were with to fall at the hands of the men serving the King of the North and House Tully of Riverrun, and find themselves in the den filled with wolves. You are Robb Stark's wife, said Martin Lannister while he was being bandaged. Yes, I am, replied Talisa with a smile. Is it true what they say about him? Asked Martin curiously. I don't know. What do they say about him? Asked Talisa, though she had an idea on just what they were referring to about her husband. So many amusing stories people tell these days that he can turn into a wolf at night, asked Martin with Talisa smiled further since she heard that rumor too, given his dire wolf fought beside him in battle. True, answered Talisa to humor the story along. And he eats the flesh of his enemies, asked Martin with Talisa nodding again. Also true. You seem nervous about that. You must be Lannisters by blood, concluded Talisa when she saw how nervous the boys were about being surrounded by so many of their house's enemies. Martin Lannister, answered Martin respectfully while fearing any insult to this woman would provoke the wrath of the Wolf King. The Lannister men had called Robb Stark in the past. Well, Martin Lannister, you have nothing to fear. My husband doesn't eat children of his enemies unless there is a full moon out. Is there a full moon out tonight? Asked Talisa when she looked back to the guards behind her. No, my lady, replied one of the guards neutrally. See nothing to fear, replied Talisa before she finished working on the boy and sighed at the horror of war leaving its mark on the two boys in front of her. A knock on the door made the men behind Talisa turn with swords at the ready should it be a trap, and open the door to see the three-eyed masked sage himself. Mind if I come and asked Naruto, with the guards going pale in the face and nodding quickly. You are the great sage. I'm honored, replied Talisa with a humble bow, and the two Lannister boys behind her looking at him in awe with a hint of fear. Robb Stark's wife, I can already see your beauty in the physical realm is surpassed only by the one of your spirit. No wonder Robb Stark fell in love with you, remarked Naruto with Talisa smiling at his praise and bowed humbly once more in front of him. Thank you, great sage. May I inquire as to why you are here? Asked Talisa with Naruto nodding. You may, and to answer your question, I am here to take these Lannister boys home to their father in Lannisport. I already talked to Robb about it and he agrees this has to be done since the peace talks in King's Landing will happen soon. This will be a show of good faith that everyone involved with these peace talks wants them to happen, said Naruto with Talisa nodding, and the boys looked happy. Do you require some measure of transport to take you and the boys from here straight to Lannisport? Asked Talisa since she could arrange it thanks to being Robb's wife. Thank you, but no, I will take them using my own means of getting from one destination to another, said Naruto while walking up to the nervous boys and patted their shoulders. You're not going to use your magic to turn us into anything unnatural, right? Asked Willem Lannister since he had heard stories about the sage and his powers to bend all things to his will with a flick of his wrist. No, I only do that to naughty children who decide to do horrible, unspeakable things to people and deserve a taste of their own actions aimed at them. You haven't been naughty children, have you? Asked Naruto with both boys shaking their head. No, no, great sage, answered Martin with Willem nodding. Too good, then you have nothing to worry about now. What I'm about to do will make you a bit nauseous and there is a chance you might vomit, but it is a small price to pay for this quick trip home, replied Naruto with both boys nodding. We're ready, said Willem with Naruto smirking under his mask. You wish, thought Naruto before he vanished via Kamui with the two boys right out of the room to the shock of Talisa and the guards. The twins short time later saw the wolf pup and his Tully for a mother send the great sage himself to my home to speak to me on their behalf. I don't know whether to be insulted or honored, commented Walder Frye while sitting in his chair at the head of the table and drinking his wine and eating food like a pig in front of Naruto with several of Walder Frey's children off to the side. Father proper decorum dictates, said one of Walder's children, though whether he was a legitimate or bastard child of House Frey was unknown. Was I talking to you, bastard? I know you and the others are all waiting for my death. So one of you can sit here. I'm not dead yet. I've still got life left in me, enough to talk, eat, drink, and fuck any young woman I want. I did it with your mother years ago and I can do it now, countered Walder Frey angrily. Father please, the sage whispered Lothar Frey, who glanced at the masked three-eyed man standing there with a growing angry look in those set eyes. All right, fine, I welcome you, great sage, into my home under the light of the seven and its protection. Now let's get down to this fucking business regarding the wolf pup and the breaking of his oath he made to marry one of my daughters, said Walder before motioning Naruto forward. Robb Stark wishes to make amends regarding his oath. When his mother made the actual agreement to have him marry one of your daughters, he intended to come here himself to handle such a grievance himself, but the recent passing of his grandfather Holster Tully and the impending peace talks in King's Landing has caused his trip to be unintentionally delayed. To prevent this dishonor from growing further, I offered to speak to you on his behalf and fix this mess to prevent further problems, offered Naruto civilly toward the old-looking man who looked more like a walking corpse. Honestly, how was this man not dead from old age? Yet excuses, all just like his grandfather Holster never came to the twins to celebrate my name day or my many wedding to my many wives, always sticking his nose up at me, and his grandson of a king does the same now, and using Holster's death as an excuse in these peace talks. But I could care less. I have a better chance of fucking a woman and getting her pregnant on the first try, said Walder before taking a drink of wine. Father please, you are being insulting to our guests, said another one of Walder's many grown children. Shut up, I don't have to listen to you as if you were my better. I am the Lord of House Frey and of the twins. I can bloody do what I like in the safety of my own home, said Walder while glaring at one of his many sons. Even if this is your home, Lord Frey, it doesn't give you the right to be a fucking cunt to your guest when they have done to deserve your rude hospitality, countered Naruto with the old man glaring at him. This is my house. If I want to piss shit and fuck in front of someone, I will do it as I please. I might just fuck one of my future wives right here just to prove my point, said Walder while Naruto's face became a scowl behind his mask. I would advise against it. The instant you drop your pants, I drop you from the top of one of the towers before destroying this bridge to build a new one, threatened Naruto with Walder snarling at him at the sheer defiance made here. So that's how it is, how you come here to my home under the pretense of being polite and talking about fixing what Robb Stark broke, and for what, to threaten me, and in my own home no less, challenged Walder with Naruto shaking his head. No, I did come here and speak to you about Robb Stark's actions and get it resolved, but you have been insulting since I first stepped into this room and acted like you could do what you wanted in my presence. No matter how disgusting or insulting I found it. Tell me, Walder Frey, were you this insulting to Caitlyn Stark when she first came here, said Naruto while taking another step forward. You're just like House Tully and House Stark, always thinking yourself better than me and my house, always looking down at House Frey with contempt. Holster didn't come to any of my weddings even before he became ill and weak in the body. And for what all? Because I like to fuck young women and make them produce babies, both legitimate ones and bastards. I will fuck any girl or woman who catches my fancy, and I will make her produce a child of my blood. And if Caitlyn Tully Stark or her wolf pup for a son Robb Stark don't like it, I can remind them that my home is key to providing support from the north to their army, and if they still want to get those supplies, they better give me something worthy of the oath-breaking, countered Walder Frey before he spit on the ground in front of Naruto, who frowned further and his power started to come out of his body. The time for being civil was over with this old ghoul of a man. You are a disgusting piece of shit, Walder Frey. You are a man barely clinging to life and making demands of others like they owe you for years of past debts long overdue. The Tullus and the Starks owe you nothing. Why? Because you are nothing, Walder Frey. Your house is filled with a bloodline that is some of the blackest around. You have no honor. You do not care about the oaths you swore to House Tully. You go around fucking any woman who has had the unfortunate task of being within hand-grabbing distance and producing more of your vile offspring. You want to know why Holster Tully didn't attend your weddings in the past? Because he knew, as I do from the mere sight of you, that you, Walder Frey, are filth. You are slime, lower than trash. You don't deserve to be held in high esteem like you feel others should. When mentioning your house, I look at you and I see a bitter and withered old man who has only three major parts of him functioning out of his entire body, namely your brain, your mouth, and your cock. You also stink of shit from lack of bathing. It is amazing that any woman fucked by you does not faint, vomit, or both from the stench created from your ugly, grotesque body. So do not bitch to me about how no one from the Tullus or the Starks respects you or your house, Walder Frey. You have done nothing to make others think highly of you, only lower, answered Naruto coldly and cruelly with Walder Fry looking absolutely furious at the insults thrown his way in his own house and in front of his family. No less. Kill him. I order you all to kill this fucking cunt right now, commanded Walder while he pointed his decrepit finger at Naruto. Did I hit a nerve? Did I get to the heart of the matter? It must hurt to hear the bitter truth about what people think of you, doesn't it, Walder? Knowing for all your blustering and showing off the supposed greatness of your house, all you are showing everyone is just how pathetic you truly are, and bringing about further shame upon yourself, commented Naruto while the room was now filled with knights, archers on the balcony and other soldiers ready to kill him at a moment's notice. I have had about enough of you. When I show off your head on a pike at the top of the twins, we will see who will have the power to control the Riverlands. House Tully with its idiot for a new liege lord, House Stark with its so-called king, who breaks oaths, or House Fry, the house that killed the demon sage himself without a shred of mercy for the insults he slandered us with, challenged Walder Fry angrily while Naruto did not look amused. Oh really? You speak to me about how people broke oaths to you when you yourself have done it. I know all about your secret messages to House Lannister, willing to cut Robb Stark off and betray him if several men from House Lannister were to marry some of your daughters. I also know how you had planned to use your own daughter, promised to Robb Stark, to control the man when married, and when an heir has been made from their union you plan to have him die from a poison you give to her on her wedding night to hide away until the deed is done and the child is secured as the future king of the North. Do not speak to me or about Robb Stark breaking oaths, Walder Fry, when you were playing both sides and plan to show your allegiance to the side who gives you more, replied Naruto, angrily, with Walder sneering at him at having his plans for the wolf pup being discovered. Kill him now, commanded Walder angrily, and his men moved to kill the masked sage, starting with the archers firing arrows at him only for the projectiles to dissolve under the slowly oppressive power of Naruto's chakra now coming alive around him and forming 10 massive tails. So that's how it is, huh, Walder? You can't stand the truth, and once caught at playing both sides of the war try to cover it up like a child, lying to his parents about all the horrible things he's done. When asked about them, how pathetic, such a vile house with your blood does not deserve to live, so I will do this world a favor and simply end it here and now, declared Naruto in a demonic with his power spiking and making the room shake. What are you doing? Stop it, come on you cunts, kill him already, exclaimed Walder Fry while his army shook in fear just as the twins themselves seemed to shake. Your time is over, your house, your bloodline, and even this building built on greed and sin will die with you for your crimes. You should feel honored. I haven't used this much power in centuries, said Naruto while some of his tails lashed out at the Fry men around him and causing their bodies to disintegrate in an instant. What in the seven hells are you? asked Walder Fry while finding himself trapped and unable to move, in part because of the power from the sage in front of him and in part his own elderly body. I am many things. I am a beginning, I am an end, and as of this very moment all things connected to House Fry shall end. I answered Naruto with his eyes locked onto Walder Fray's terrified form. A massive beam of light violently exploded upward to the heavens. All could see it from the wall to the Iron Islands, and even at the Vale the light had parted the clouds in the sky while the ground shook all over as if the realm itself was quaking in fear. In the end, all that was left of the area was a massive circular hole, where the twins once stood, in water from what was left of the massive river crossing now pouring into it, and standing in the air using the wind itself was Uzumaki Naruto, who looked over the entire area for any survivors of House Fry. He didn't expect any, of course, having obliterated the twins and all within it into nothingness, and knowing the entire house was indeed within the twins at the time of the destruction. Still, it paid to be absolutely sure and watched for any possible survivors to the annihilation of the Freys, and found none. Lannisport at the moment. Tywin Lannister was by his window when the explosion and beam of light appeared at the twins happened, and he could honestly say he was glad in his decision to not respond to the older man. He never liked the perverse and crude ruler of House Fry. No one did. The only reason anyone even made deals with the sickly-looking old man was because they had to make deals with him, because of the key trade route between Riverrun and the North. Tywin would freely admit he made deals in the past with Walder Fry because business was business and money was money, but there was something unsettling about making deals with Walder Fry outside of business in the realm of war. Tywin was tempted by the deal offered by Walder, reduced price and paying tolls for crossing the twins, marrying a few of his daughters to a few Lannister men, and using the weakened position of House Tullis following Holster's death to become the new liege lord of the Riverlands while putting the Stark army in a pincer move. All those things were so tempting if not for the Baratheon/Tyrell alliance adding their own army to the Stark/Tully army. All they had to do was attack the twins, which they would easily win given their insanely larger army, control the massive structure, and then redirect their efforts back to attacking House Lannister. Oh sure, Tywin could attack if the enemy laid siege to the twins, but the much larger army of 4 major houses could easily fight off House Lannister and take the twins easily while at most losing a third of their men. If there was one thing Tywin Lannister knew from his own years of experience in raising his house to one of importance, it was knowing when to cut your losses and focus on the big picture staring you straight in the face, namely the peace talks he was setting out to tomorrow and ending this expensive and costly war without gold being found deep in the mines. Tywin knew the days when Lannister's shit gold were now coming to an end and a new form of revenue outside of gold would be needed. The secret of there being no gold in the mines would not be kept hidden for much longer. It was practically an all-out invitation for the war to continue until the war lasted for so long that even the massive wealth the Lannisters possessed was destroyed to nothing, not what Tywin wanted in terms of a legacy left behind after his death. "I take it you saw what I did?" asked Tyrion after entering the room. "Yes. House Frey is no more." "He must have made the sage very angry to unleash that level of power," commented Tywin, with Tyrion nodding. "Walder Frey makes everyone angry, but yes, I can see your point. I don't suppose you telling the sage about Walder's attempts at making deals with us had anything to do with it?" questioned Tyrion, with Tywin letting a small smirk appear on his face. "If only that were true, but I cannot take credit for such an act. At best I merely provided the necessary proof of House Frey's treachery." The sage already suspected as much from Walder Frey in terms of the old man's plotting and scheming against the North and the Tullus. Besides, with the way things are now and the peace talks we plan to have soon, it would have been foolish to accept the offer. In addition, the sage did return 2 members of my family back to us not that long ago, and a Lannister always pays his debts, replied Tywin, with Tyrion nodding that we do. "I imagine any attempt to stall the peace talks will be silenced by this sudden act of destruction, though I'm curious how the sage will fix the lack of a bridge at the crossing. Without a bridge, supplies from the north to Robb Stark's forces will be put in jeopardy to some degree," said Tyrion, with Tywin smirking a bit more. Knowing him, he's already fixing it right now, and a new bridge has already been built where the twins once stood. Something simple yet quite pleasant to look at, not like the twins, and the feeling of walking into a pit of hungry scavengers ready to devour you at the first sign of weakness, commented Tywin, with Tyrion nodding. "Joffrey and Cersei have been relocated to their assigned carriage and we will soon be ready to depart," said Tyrion after a moment of silence. "Good. All the guards assigned to us reliable and loyal?" asked Tywin, knowing his not so innocent daughter or bastard grandson would try to find a way to make the men on this trip shift loyalties to them for freedom. "I chose them all personally. Each man knows what is at stake and what will happen if they try to betray us. What just happened at the twins will no doubt reinforce it. Bronn is also with us, and he knows neither Cersei nor Joffrey can offer him anything that would warrant his betrayal. Plus, the man has an uncanny ability to sniff out backstabbers and betrayers from his experience as a sellsword," said Tyrion, with Tywin nodding, knowing the man did have that keen sense. Bronn may be a sellsword, but the man also knew enough of the world to know just how far people will go to kill, and such talents were useful to those who could afford use his skills when needed. Said skills which Tywin saw firsthand in keeping 3 would-be assassins at bay when they thought killing the old lion at the behest of his incest bastard-born grandson Joffrey's command would give them some kind of reward, their weight and armor in gold. From what Bronn had learned, once they were all questioned by the sellsword about what was promised them once Tywin, and possibly Tyrion, later on was dead, what those idiots got was a painful death. And Joffrey, well, he was denied food for the entire day and told to keep it down when bitching about it. "Come, the sooner we get to King's Landing, the sooner we can end this ridiculous war and refocus our efforts on rebuilding the Lannister name properly," stated Tywin, with Tyrion right beside him with a smile on his face. It was actually nice to stand by his father's side, on the same page of something for once. King's Landing. Days later. "It seems everyone here has arrived ahead of schedule," commented Naruto, with a hint of amusement in his voice while seeing the banners for Stark, Tully, Lannister, Tyrell and of course Baratheon in the main area. They were told to go by the City Watch. The City Watch had actually improved itself after being placed under the very harsh yet necessary guidance of Ser Sandor Clegane's command as its new commander. The man had felt out of place being knighted with no official duties aside from managing House Clegane, which the scarred man didn't really care about at this point, and left his house to be managed by one of his other family members. So, as Regent of the Seven Kingdoms, Ned Stark had decided to give the man a key position where he could help others gain an honorable reputation among the small folk and have purpose all in one. "Your actions at the twins and House Frey's destruction having nothing to do with it, I'm sure," commented Ned, while standing beside him with the Kingsguard flanking both of them. "You could always ask them," offered Naruto, with Ned smirking. "Now no, I think I will just assume what I wish." "Nothing more," replied Ned, while Naruto smirked behind his mask. The two watched the various sides become tense around each other. Some guards from the Lannister side had hands on their swords, while the Stark/Tully and Baratheon/Tyrell men had their own at the ready. It was only Naruto making a noise and getting them to turn their attention to him did the tension between them all die down. especially with the look Naruto was giving them to basically knock it the fuck off so they could get down to business. Tywin Lannister, said Robb Stark when Tywin approached with Tyrion. Robb Stark, I see much of your father's fierceness in you. The fact you have won every battle against my army proves it, replied Tywin while seeing Catelyn Stark watching him carefully and the young beautiful foreign woman standing beside young man whom he assumed was his wife. If what he heard was true, my father taught me many things, namely fighting for what you believe in, said Robb while Tywin nodding since he could respect that. Lady Catelyn Stark, it's good to see you again despite these circumstances. I'm sorry to hear about your father's passing. He was a good man. I would have come to the funeral to pay my respects, but we were just starting a ceasefire with your side, replied Tywin with Catelyn nodding with a stoic face but still nodded. All the same, thank you, Lord Tywin. My father was loved and respected by many. He ruled well and justly over Riverrun. The current realm of men is a slightly darker place without him in it, said Catelyn while Tywin gave a brief nod before turning his attention to the younger woman beside Robb Stark. And you must be Lady Talisa Stark, said Tywin while the woman smiled honestly and curtsied respectfully toward the Lord of House Lannister. I am her Lord. Tywin, you are every bit as intimidating as my loving husband. Led me to believe, though, I assure you, he said it with respect on his part, said Talisa with Tywin smiling slightly at her. My reputation precedes me and seems still. I will take it as a compliment all the same, said Tywin, knowing the woman in front of him had a fire in her, and thus what no doubt caught Robb Stark's attention. It was no wonder the young wolf married her to be young again and in love. I see King's Landing has improved greatly since we were all here last. The smell of the place seems to have improved greatly, commented Renly with his wife Marjorie Tyrell beside him and Olenna Tyrell, the Queen of Thorns herself, behind her granddaughter. Indeed, I might not have to use some of my perfume this time around, replied Olenna while seeing King's Landing had indeed improved smell-wise since the last time she was here. I think our current Lord Regent and Sage had something to do with that, remarked Tyrion while glancing over at the approaching figures just mentioned. Lord Stark, King's Landing thrives under your guidance, replied Tywin while seeing Ned nod. It does, but only due to the help of those enlisted around me, namely Ser Barristan, Ser Sandor Clegane Varys, and of course the great sage himself, to name some of the key people helping me with the improvements of the city, replied Ned, knowing who to honor for improving King's Landing. After becoming Lord Regent, using key maps of the city, we helped reform many of the drainage areas all over King's Landing, and even found some clogged pipes responsible for causing a backflow into the lower sections of Flea Bottom. If we didn't fix the issue, there was a chance of a plague sprouting up within the next few years, and no one wants that happening anytime soon, said Naruto with the group nodding in agreement. Are the poor being treated well, asked Marjorie while Naruto nodded and saw Olenna smirking at the sight of her granddaughter making herself out to be the loving champion of the small folk. Yes, it was something I had Ser Sandor Clegane take care of when made commander of the City Watch. He made sure the people with little to nothing weren't cruelly trampled on by those who do have more than them. I even set up several orphanages and even what I call an apprenticeship stations, where those who have no skills can go to acquire them in order to seek work to gain money so their lives aren't so poor, explained Naruto, as he wanted to see fewer poor people living on the streets begging for money and doing just about any unethical or immoral act to gain an impressive. A strong workforce means good productivity and fewer poor people among the small folk all at the same time, though paying for it must be difficult after all with the crown in debt, commented Renly, knowing Littlefinger had bankrupted the kingdom under his older brother's rule. Fortunately it wasn't as bad as you think, Renly, after I took a look at the ledgers left behind by the former and dead master of coin, I was able to relocate much of the gold Littlefinger had drained from the crown. I recovered most of it to pay back all the debts owed to the Iron Bank. What money I have yet to find and help pay for the rest owed to House Lannister will be covered thanks to the trade agreements made with House Martell and Essos, along with some others places. Ned and I were able to broker trade deals with, said Naruto while Tywin was surprised the sage was trying to get the necessary funds to pay back the crown's debt owed to the Lannisters during King Robert's time. Not that my house doesn't appreciate this, but why, asked Tyrion with Naruto let out a chuckle. Tyrion, regardless of the war, King Robert still owed House Lannister a large sum of money, and the debt still stands regardless of him not being alive to pay it. All the debts owed should be paid, and this is one of them. A crown that does not pay its debts is not one that can function properly, Ned. And I feel that when the new king or queen is made to rule over the 7 kingdoms, the person sitting on the Iron Throne should be able to start out debt-free, replied Naruto with Tyrion nodding since it made sense as part of the agreement made. We have Jaime Lannister and Armory Lorch ready to be taken to the Black Cells, said Robb before he motioned for his men to open the carriage holding the prisoners who had been cleaned up prior to coming here, and looked more respectable if one were to see just what they looked like prior to that, and as per my part 1 have my daughter Cersei along with my grandson Joffrey here as well, added Tywin while calling Joffrey his grandson like he just drank poison before he motioned for his men to open the carriage holding both family members who were currently resisting once brought out of the carriage and were held firmly in place despite the verbal commands from Joffrey to release him. Place all 4 in the black cells under watchful guards, but make sure no harm comes to them until the actual trial starts for each prisoner, commanded Ned, with the city watch taking control of all 4 prisoners being taken away. It is not easy to see my children taken away like that. To hand them over family means a great deal to me, remarked Tywin while seeing Ned nod in agreement. They won't be mistreated while here, Lord Tywin, I swear it, replied Ned, while Tywin nodded, knowing the Lord Regent well enough to know he would keep his word when will the trial start. I hate to say this, but everyone came here a bit early for it, and the peace talks, stated Tyrion, since coming here ahead of schedule set things off a bit. House Martell from Dorne are coming here, namely Prince Oberyn Martell. He wants to be here for the trial against Amory Lorch, but he won't arrive for a couple of days. Since that is the case, I suggest we all spend this time to relax, if only for a bit. And there's also the face we have to properly prepare for the upcoming trials. Once the peace talks are over with this war ending, replied Naruto, with everyone nodding. Will House Martell be joining in the peace talks as a neutral party or negotiator, asked Tyrion, while knowing his house's history with House Martell was not a good one. No, I'm going to ask Prince Oberyn to be more of a witness to it, but he can offer some suggestions to issue that neither side can agree on if such an event does happen, replied Naruto, with Tyrion nodding. In the meantime, my lords and ladies, I have had rooms prepared for you and your men while staying here. If you will follow, I can show you where they are in the Red Keep, said Ned while being the gracious host for this group for now. But in truth he wanted to speak to his son about this whole king in the north business and trying to prevent the north from leaving the kingdom. Essos at the moment Daenerys and her army were encamped outside the walls of the city called Yunkai. Like the city of Astapor, this city thrived on slavery and the selling of slaves while making lots of money doing it. Of course, the one difference between the slaves of Yunkai and the slaves of Astapor was the type of slaves produced by both cities. The city of Astapor conditioned slaves for fighting for those who bought them and making slave armies that were, if put kindly, expendable on the battlefield. The slaves of Yunkai were not meant for fighting but meant to serve simply as slaves, to handle all forms of lowly tasks, to clean up after the masters, to feed the masters, dress the masters, and depending on the various preferences of the masters, to have relations with them whether the slaves wanted to do these things or not. Not all masters were cruel. A small majority of the masters had raised their slaves well, treated them as close to free men and women as one could in Yunkai, making sure that the slaves in their service were good playmates, servants, or teachers for their children in exchange for living the slightly better than average Yunaki slave lifestyle. Again, these were the small majority, an extremely small majority. The majority of the masters in Yunaki were like those of Astapor. They were cruel and not afraid to use the whip or sword to make their point on their living property, with the slaves outnumbering the masters. The loss of 1, 2, or 10 slaves daily to make all the others know their place in the world was nothing to them. Yunkai, the Yellow City, one ruled by masters and have many slaves, remarked Yoro while Naruto nodded. True. But they don't have slave army. These slaves are trained more for pleasure, more money to be made and less of an effort to train in the art. Plus I would wager some of the masters who train these pleasure slaves have no doubt tasted the merchandise first in order to prepare them for the marketplace, said Naruto while Yora nodding and saw that Daenerys was scowling heavily. Is it just the women who are treated that way or the men too, asked Daenerys with a hint of anger. Both. Unlike Astapor, the slaves of Yunkai are of both genders, my lady. Rich women buy male slaves for satisfy their appetites when their late or stupid husbands can't do the job themselves. Some of these rich male masters of Yunkai even prefer other male slaves and use them as such for their own gratification. Some even prefer them at an even younger age, both boys and girls, replied Naruto with Daenerys narrowing her eyes. I see, remarked Daenerys with Yora knowing that look well of a woman who wants to unleash her wrath on those deserving of it. Fortunately, they don't have a slave army. They do have an army, but it's ill-equipped and mostly just guards for the masters. They can't win a fight against your army on the open field, said Naruto with Yora nodding. On the battlefield outside of the city, but the Yunaki know they don't have to fight like we do. They have strong high walls, lots of provisions, and above all else patience. They can wait us out for weeks, months, maybe even a year or more if pushed. We do not have the means or resources to wait that long. We will have lost much of our army if we stayed here during that time. Time would be our enemy, remarked Yoro with Naruto nodding and Daenerys scowling further. I will not lose half of my army before I eventually make it back to Westeros. A future queen does not squander what she has, and I will not sacrifice my army recklessly. I am not my brother, replied Daenerys while glaring at the city of Yunkai. We don't need Yunkai to make it back to Westeros for the Iron Throne Khaleesi, you only need a small fleet to sail with the army you have back home and claim what is yours by right, replied Yora, with Daenerys disagreeing, and leave over 200,000 slaves in Yunkai to suffer to die. They breed slaves like it is a sport. Within a few years they could easily have several times that number, all being used for the sick pleasure of a man or woman who thinks they are better than the slaves they abuse. And for what? Because they have gold and thus have power, asked Naruto. With Yora feeling a bit nervous since he had once been a smuggler and slave trader, it was why Ned Stark had wanted his head. Yora was from a strong house loyal to the Starks and had shamed both with his actions. Yora had vowed to redeem himself and felt the only way to do it was to put the rightful ruler of Westeros on the Iron Throne, maybe even become a Kingsguard. If possible, then we have 200,000 reasons for taking the city, said Daenerys, knowing she could not forgive herself if she just left all those people to live horrible lives of suffering. If you want, I can just destroy their walls with my power and create a big enough hole for the army to march into the city, offered Naruto, with Daenerys shaking her head. No, not yet. Let's try diplomacy first. I would rather they surrender the city to me willingly over attacking it like others have no doubt done before my time, answered Daenerys, with Naruto nodding. As you wish, but my offer still stands, replied Naruto, with Daenerys smiling at him. Duly noted, remarked Daenerys before she sent one of her Unsullied to the gate to inform the masters that she would receive one of them to talk terms. Eventually one of the masters came with a small entourage of slaves carrying him in a single one-man carriage along with a large chest. The master in question saw row upon row of Unsullied, knowing of their reputation on how they were trained in the city of Astapor to be ruthless. When commanded to unleash their training on the enemy, several of the masters from Astapor often visited Yunkai for pleasure slaves, namely the female variety, to eventually impregnate sire bastards and turn the boys into Unsullied, while the girls were sent here to be pleasure slaves. Chances are at least one of these Unsullied had the blood of one of the now late masters from Astapor in their veins. Still, to see so many of Unsullied in one place, standing at attention ready to strike if he so much as sneezed wrong, made the master a tad nervous. Eventually the group from Yunkai made their way up to Daenerys's tent, where slaves set down the carriage carrying the master and helped the man out of his seat to walk into the tent. Daenerys for her part disliked the sight of the slaves she saw from her position in the tent and their physical condition being less than pleasant to look at. They were dirty, thin, some looked like they had been whipped only a few days ago, and their eyes showed they felt dead inside. Easy, Daenerys, I sense your emotions. I know you want to kill this fucker and free the slave with him from bondage, but that would be the easy short route, and the slaves in the city will no doubt be punished simply out of spite for your actions. Remember, we want to free all of the slaves, which means we have to wait for the right moment. Now is not the right moment, said Naruto, before the master entered the tent. To the sage Daenerys, Grey Worm, Yora, Missandei, and 3 glaring dragons snarling at the master. They clearly sensed their mother's displeasure of the man in front of them. Now comes the noble Razdal Mo Araz of that ancient and honorable house, master of men and speaker to savages, to offer terms of peace, said Missandei, while seeing the man walk into the tent like he owned it, only for the 3 dragons screeching at him to cut off his attempt at looking superior to everyone else in it. Noble Lord of Yunkai, you currently stand before one Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen, Khaleesi of the Great Grass Sea, Breaker of Chains, and the Mother of Dragons. If this were MY10, I would be insulted over the fact you are not kneeling at my feet and begging for mercy at your false superiority when in my presence, said Naruto, while watching the master from Yunkai look at him for a second before focusing on Daenerys. Fortunately for you, Lord Araz, this is MY10, so I will forgive the disrespect shown here today this one time. You may approach. Sit, said Daenerys, while she motioned for the master to sit in the seat and across from her. Will the noble lord take a refreshment, asked Missandei, while the master nodded and was given some water to quench his thirst. Ancient and glorious is Yunkai. Our empire was considered old before dragons stirred in old Valyria. Many an army has broken against our strong high walls. You shall find no easy conquest here, Khaleesi, said Razdal, while seeing Daenerys turned her attention to her 3 dragons and fed them a large fish to fight over. I do not want this to become a war. Such things are violent and pointless. I merely wish to exchange my terms with you so that we may live another day, replied Daenerys, while the master in front of her was more pleased than he was willing to admit. I'm glad word of your actions at Astapor have reached the wise master's ears, but the Yunkai are a forgiving and generous people, replied Razdal, before clapping his hands, and 2 groups of slaves who came with him brought in 2 large chests. Upon opening one of them in front of the woman, she saw gold bars inside stacked up to the very brim of the container. Generous indeed, commented Daenerys, while looking at the gold. The wise master have sent this as a gift for the Silver Queen. There's even more than this waiting for you on your own personal ship, replied Razdal, while Daenerys looked at him in surprise and Naruto looked at him with suspicion. My ship, asked Daenerys, while glancing at Yora, who was surprised, and like Naruto was also suspicious of this surprising generosity. No one gave so much out of generosity. No one. Yes, Khaleesi, as I said, we are a generous people. Your ship will be made available to you whenever you wish, said Razdal, while Naruto narrowed his 3 eyes at him. And what do you ask of me in return for taking my new ship and newly acquired wealth? The wise masters have seen fit to give me, asked Daenerys, curiously, knowing like her own companions in the room that there was a price for such generosity. All we ask is you make use of your ship, sail back to Westeros where you belong, and leave us alone to conduct our business here in peace, replied Razdal, while Daenerys frowned slightly at the offer. She also noticed the Yunkai were offering her only one ship, not a fleet. One ship could not hold 8,000 unsullied and what was left of her Dothraki horde who stayed following Khal Drogo's death. Will you provide me more ships for my army, asked Daenerys, with the master now being the one frowning. Unfortunately, your Unsullied cannot accompany you back home. They have killed their masters and have laid siege at Astapor. While they may have been ordered by you, the Unsullied must pay for their crimes, as they are property of Essos through and through, said Razdal, while Daenerys and Naruto scowled at him. Glancing at Naruto, the masked sage looked over at her and gave a diplomacy is over look with the go-ahead to make the master in front of them know they were not fucking around. Thank you for your generous terms, Lord Razdal. As such, I have a gift of my own for you. In return, I offer you your life, replied Daenerys, with the man in front of her frowning confusion. My life, asked Razdal, while glancing from Daenerys to the various armed men in the room. Yes, your life and the lives of your wise masters, but I also want something in return for my gift. You will release every slave in Yunkai. Every man, woman, and child shall be given food, clothing, and property as they can carry out as payment for their years of servitude, and will be allowed to leave with me. Reject this gift by me and it will come to war, replied Daenerys coldly, and saw the master in front of her looking furious at her offer for peace. You are mad, woman. We are not like Astapor or Karth. We are Yunkai, and we have powerful friends who will take great pleasure in destroying you. Those who survive we shall enslave once more. Perhaps we will make you a slave as well, said Razdal when he stood up, but was forced stumbling back down when Drogon screeched angrily at him for threatening his mother. And Naruto had surprised everyone when he somehow summoned Kubikura Ibocho to his hand while leveling it pointedly with one arm at the master. The length of the sword actually made Razdal fall back out of his seat in fright. Drogon actually jumped onto the sword to further enforce its mother's defense. Say something like that again and you will die in this tent, before being fed to these 3 dragons, I assure you, Razdal, that while fish is a good meal for them, nothing would make these dragons happier than eating the flesh of their mother's enemies. And from what I can see here, you are an enemy, commented Naruto, with the 3 dragons around him screeching in agreement. You swore me safe conduct, protested Razdal while looking at Daenerys. I did, but my friend here did not, and he hates it when you threaten his friends. Not to mention my dragons made no such promises to you, and there is the fact you did threaten their mother. Children like mine tend to be protective of the one responsible for bringing them into the world, countered Daenerys while she saw Razdal looking increasingly angry at her. Take the gold, commanded Razdal to the slaves, and they cautiously moved to obey the order but were stopped by 3 kunai thrown in front of them at their feet and 3 dragons, now turning their attention to the slaves while moving over the chests to keep them from being grabbed. My gold, you gave it to me as a gift, remember, and as such I will put it to good use. You would be wise to do the same with my gift to you. Now get out of my sight before one of my dragons decides to make a meal out of your body, commanded Daenerys coldly while seeing the scared slaves and Razdal leave the tent. The Yunkai are proud people, Khaleesi. They will not bend, warned Yoro, with Naruto smirking at him. Pride is a weakness, Yoro. What does not bend will be broken when enough pressure is applied. You just need to know where to apply the pressure, said Naruto, with Daenerys nodding in agreement. We gave them a chance to be different, to change and not have their blood spilled. They refused to listen. Now they will fall, said Daenerys while petting Drogon affectionately. Agreed. You kept a cool head when talking to the master. The mark of a good ruler is never backing down to the threats of others. It invites your enemies to become bold and take more from you during negotiations. Now they will know you mean business and are not to be ignored simply because you are a woman, replied Naruto, with Daenerys giving him a smirk before she frowned. He said the Yunkai had powerful friends. Who was he talking about, asked Daenerys, with Yora shrugging. I don't know, Khaleesi. Whoever these friends are must be past customers who have bought slaves from them. Many wealthy and powerful people in Essos would not stand for someone taking away one of their guilty pleasures in the form of slaves, trained to give them pleasure, answered Yora with Daenerys frowning. Further find out, ordered Daenerys, knowing Yora could and would learn who these friends are that they seemed confident could challenge her army. My offer still stands, Daenerys. It wouldn't even have to involve your army. I could slip and kill all the wise masters, open the gates, and the army could march into the city. All of this could be done before these friends of the wise masters could get here in time, said Naruto, with Daenerys shaking her head. No, I wish to know who these friends the Yunkai possess. Once I know, then I will act on how to deal with them, replied Daenerys with Naruto nodding. And if these friends of the Yunkai are the savage kind that like to maim, kill, rape, and not in that particular order, asked Naruto with Daenerys now having a cold fire in her eyes. Whether by my army's hand or yours, I want them destroyed, answered Daenerys with Naruto nodding. Just remember one thing, Daenerys, don't become the monster you are fighting. We can easily slip from the path in front of us and turn into the very thing we despise, replied Naruto with Daenerys nodding. I will remember that, great sage. In the meantime, I will see what my enemies have on their side for an army before I show them the full extent of mine, said Daenerys while she pet her dragons and soothing their anger with her touch. It was high time the name Targaryen was spoken once more throughout the world.